All right, so I got everything set up. We got the our faces are on camera. We got the Elden Ring B-roll. That's all the stuff I don't want to show is all behind the camera and other things. So we're all good.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's talk about Elden Ring. So everybody, welcome to Dungeons Developer Insights. This is a weird episode where we're not going to talk about DDO, because I mean we might make passing references. We're mostly talking
Mhm.
about the new video game from FromSoft. That's weird to say. Elden Ring, which, if you are completely unfamiliar, it is a large open world video game that takes the core concepts of the Dark Souls franchise, but makes it bigger. Literally bigger. The world is very big. Um, so we're going to talk probably about our impressions about the game, what we thought about the things, some of the different design aspects, what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, some of our favorite moments, the types of characters that we played, and it should be a good time. So get excited because, man, I love this video game. I don't know about you, but I had so much fun with it.
Yeah, I think that's just a great place to start. Is just overall impressions. I had a blast.
Yeah,
I'm almost done 100%ing the game, and I loved it. This is my first Souls game I've ever played, although I'm intimately familiar with the genre. Like I've watched all of Bloodborne, like from a couch, just watching someone else play it.
right.
Um, and I had an amazing time. I had a wonderful time. Before we get too into it, should we spoil things? Like, am I trying to
Oh,
avoid
no, this
stuff?
is 100% full of spoilers, because I'm literally going to be showcasing tons of bosses and stuff as B-roll footage. So if
Mhm.
you want to avoid spoilers, beat the game, then come back and watch this whole thing. Because I know obviously it's tough for people because it's like, well, it's like 100 something hours. I haven't played it yet, but I want to talk about the whole game.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of like going in there, knowing for a fact you're being spoilers. I think that's the beauty of a game like this, in that if you sat down and tried to explain the plot, you wouldn't be able to do it and you wouldn't get anywhere.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
to borrow a joke from somebody else, like I don't know if you remember this super old viral video, right? Where some guys there he's in a car, he's leaving like there's like a pre-sale of that one Harry Potter book where, spoiler alert, Snape kills Dumbledore.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, of
he
course.
drives by and he shouts out, Snape kills Dumbledore, and everyone's like, "What? Oh," you know what I mean? And just imagining someone trying to concisely spoil this game in a way that makes sense, like you'd slow the car to a crawl, you
Yeah.
pull out a flow chart like a family tree, and you're like, well, as you can see, when the Elden Ring shattered, and someone goes, "What's the Elden Ring?" and you go, "I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. What is the
I
Elden
don't, I don't
Ring?
know. I don't know.
It's in the opening cutscene. They talk about it a lot.
I don't
Uh,
know. Yeah, they talked about a lot of things in this game, and I'll be honest with you, I don't understand it. FromSoft has historically done what I would politely call a very soft touch narrative, and I would rudely call games that don't make any sense.
Games that don't make any sense sometimes, where you're like, okay, I don't know what's going on. I have no clue, but I will watch the YouTube videos from the lore guys to figure it out afterwards.
It just doesn't. And not only that, like I don't want to get too into the negatives here so early into this, because
Yeah.
I loved this game. But there is a there's a caveat here that just because something is difficult to understand does not mean it's a good story. Like this game is incomprehensible, which doesn't mean that once you put the pieces together, it's actually going to be a good plot. Like what I do
Yeah.
understand, it's all right. It's cool. I was curious mildly at certain aspects.
Yeah.
But I don't think people play this for like the overt narrative of your character. It's like the world together. It's all of it together. Like
Yeah.
the atmosphere and the connective tissue, and like that's what you're playing it for, you know? It's like it is just like Chad said, it's a vibe. It's a vibe, it's not a story, you
Exactly.
know.
So I kind of, to dovetail off of that, I actually didn't have too much of an issue with the story, and or even that it's a bad story. I think the issue that I ran into is something that you hit all over the point in Elden Ring, is that it's a really, really, really solid Dark Souls level experience. But when you make it a lot longer, they didn't add a lot to fill in those gaps. There's a lot of horse riding and dungeons to explore with not a lot of narrative importance. There's tons of like dungeons with not a lot of narrative importance, and so there is a story, and it's probably pretty good, but it'd be better in like a 25-hour game than a 100-hour game.
I mean, yeah, and like that's one of the cool parts about this game is that I'm pretty sure if you just kind of run to the end fight and you're good at the video game, it can be like
Oh
it's
yeah,
and
for
I'm not
sure.
even talking like speed run strats where you're stabbing people and carting through walls, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and like breaking NPCs. I mean, like if you straight up just went to the next boss and then beat that boss and did that 4 times, I think that's the minimum viable part of the video game.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know how people can actually do that. To me, that is astonishing that there's people out there that can just like finish a boss and then head to the next one and then go to the next one. They just follow the path. I'm like, oh, but there's this town here and I got to go here. And oh, I found this person. They told me to go over to this place and there's a cave here. I wonder what's in this cave. And oh, there's a wind thing and I got to jump in the tornado and fly up on top of this cliff.
Yeah, there's just like I look back so fondly, and it's so weird to say like looking back because this game came out like less than a month ago, but
Yeah.
like the very beginning of the game where you have like because this is my experience. I got to the point where I was 100% sure that going up the pathway towards Godric would get me killed because there's a giant on top of a hill that came down and instantly killed me. And there's people with
Yep.
like crossbows and stuff, and I was like, whoa, I'm not going there. No worries, buddy.
Yep.
Anyway, then I beat all of Caelid before I did like a U-turn. I was like, I wonder if I've done this a little bit out of order here.
Yep.
And that was before I realized you can just walk to Learning of the Lakes. Like, you don't even have to go into the castle.
Yep. You can just
You
skip
can
all of it.
simply walk around it using your eyes in the map, which, like, is just bizarre to me.
Yeah, instead of there being like a big wall that says you can't pass this until you beat a boss, or a guard that says hold on, you can't cross this bridge yet
And,
because you didn't advance the story.
And this is the game studio that invented big walls that say you can't leave this area.
Yeah, you just need like
those
some key and
foggies-
then you're stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, like they literally invented like the big stupid nonsensical wall of fog that just arbitrarily non-canonically says, "Buddy, you got to fight the boss."
Yeah.
Like you can't just leave. You gotta actually kick this dude's butt.
Yep.
Oh.
So overall, what were your experiences like? Like, what were the things that you liked about the game that you kind of jumped into it, right away that kind of grabbed you?
Just the whole thing was so cool to me because I've never played a Dark Souls game before, and I've also never really experienced this genre. And I've never played it really. I honestly, it occurred to me I've never really played this kind of open world game either. So like the whole thing, yeah, like there's a bit of a weird sort of mostly made up spat between Ubisoft and FromSoft right now. That I would say is a little bit just a touch made up, but we don't have to get into that. But like all the games people compare it to, like Far Cry and Horizon, stuff like that. I don't actually play those games. So I've never played any of their competitors' games.
Yeah.
Either. So like I didn't know what to expect. I've seen people play Bloodborne, and I was like, whew, that game seems like a nightmare.
See, it's funny because we come at this from different perspectives because I've literally played all of them. I played every single one.
Yeah.
I played the Bloodborne and the Demon Souls and the Dark Souls and all that other stuff. And I've never played any of these other ones. I didn't play Horizon Zero Dawn, and I didn't play Assassin's Creed, and I didn't play all these other more open world games. The only one I played that would be comparable is Breath of the Wild, which
you and I have different opinions on that.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, is like one of the worst versions of a Zelda game I've ever had the misfortune of playing. I can't stand that video game.
So this is semi-related. Am I allowed to swear at our Twitch channel? Or
sure, yeah. I mean, I do. But
you're fucking wrong.
No, it's not a good. No, look, here's the thing.
Incorrect. Completely wrong.
One of the things I really appreciated about Elden Ring is it does have a lot of this. The world is big and you can go anywhere, but there's a lot of nothing where you just you're just walking on walls and looking at the edges of places trying to find secrets, trying to find something, but it's just a bunch of empty space. But they make it as convenient as possible. You can teleport everywhere on a whim. You get a horse that you get almost instantly that lets you double jump. It summons underneath you. It never gets tired. You don't have to train it like you do in Zelda. You don't call your horse and then sometimes at the other side of a river or a gap and you're like, come on, horse. Why are you over there? I need you now. So, it's like inverse Zelda. It's so much nicer.
I played Breath of the Wild, and I did not use my horse at all. I think I had to train one for a quest, and I went, "Whew, this is a big pain in the butt," and then didn't come back to it. Like I just wasn't my thing. I think Breath of the Wild was very, very, very good. I thought it was like kind of. I mean, whether or not you liked it, it's hard to
Hmm.
deny that it was transformational to the genre. Like, it's a bullet point in the history of open world games. Oh
Yeah, a
my God,
bad
I'm
one.
watching your B-roll and I've never been up here. What? The whole, you go up with it?
Yeah, there's like a big like in the swamp. There's these things you step on, and they raise platforms. You get
I know,
special
but
items.
I've never been on the one that goes up with you. I've
Oh
only
yeah,
ever been around, um, very, very weird.
I will say something that is a good benefit to these large open world games is that my experience with the video game was completely different to like everyone that I've talked to. Like when I talk to
Yes.
somebody, they're like, "Oh, I used this weapon and this spell, and I did this thing," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even find those weapons or spells or things."
Yeah, that's what's happening to me. So like my partner has it for the PS4, and I have it for Steam.
Yeah.
And we managed to go in basically opposite directions on every possible thing. Like
Yeah.
I ended up with the Frenzied Flame ending, and I ended up with an alternate set of dialogue lines for Roger because I actually beat Radon before I met Ronnie, because I did Caelid first.
Which is very
Um,
smart. Yep.
yeah, and so by the time and Alex is like, oh, there's the witch with four arms, and I'm like, I don't even know who you're talking about.
Yep.
And like you go to this place in Lernia up in the Karaya Manor, and I'm like, I don't have that part of the map discovered. I guess I'll go there. So I go there, it's empty,
Yep.
and at this point I'm like, okay, so the NPC's gone, and then it's like, okay, yeah, you got to beat Radon before you can talk to Ronnie, and then I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to figure that out. So then I find there's a secret boss in the Black Knife Catacombs, and I get
Mm-hmm.
the thing from that secret boss, and I bring it to Roger, and Roger is like, you gotta get Ronnie's physical body. Ronnie's a witch, and I'm like, okie dokie. And so I walk up to Ronnie, I'm like, hey, can I have your body? And she's like, no, don't, what? Like, no, obviously not. That's a bad question to ask somebody. I'm
That
like,
is a
pretty
bad question to
please.
ask somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she's like, still no. And I'm like, okay, so I go back to Roger, and Roger is like, you should join her service and then betray and kill her. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. So I go back to Ronnie, and I'm like, change of plans. I'd actually like to join you as a vassal. And Ronnie's like, that's the most obvious ploy I've ever seen in my whole life. You're fooling nobody. Like, not me, not anybody. But, whatever. Life's short. You can do it, no problem. And that's how I started the Ronnie quest line.
Yeah.
And apparently, they built an entire thing because they assumed that if you did the exact route that I did, that you probably didn't know that Karaya Manor was on the map and that Ronnie was a required person you had to talk to. So they were
Yep.
like frantically like, "Oh my God, they're never gonna get there." Like, oh, what do we do? And like, okay, what about the new plan? Every NPC you talk to somehow has a plan in order to get you to talk to Ronnie. So you talk to this lady so she can make you go down into Noxcala so you can go get the thing so you can go to the end of the game. And
Yeah.
like, this is really cool. Like, it was completely different. Like, it's
I agree. I really appreciate how they had like multiple ways to vector you to the same areas, where instead of just having like a
exactly.
single guy that's like you have to talk to this guy who tells you to go talk to this lady who tells you to talk to this person, and then that's how you get to where you need to go. There's like
Exactly.
100 people to do whatever you want. I had the same experience with Volcano Manor, where I had people in chat, like four different people, telling me how to get through Volcano Manor, and like there's different people that wanted me to do this thing and that thing, and then I ended up finding a way to teleport in because a dude in a swamp told me to get killed by a monster to teleport into the manor, and I was
I
like, well,
love that
this is
guy.
my plan.
I love that guy. Patches is great. Did you actually get betrayed by him near Volcano Manor?
No, I didn't do the Volcano Manor quest line because I teleported in and
It's
it skipped all of
unrelated.
that.
There's like a message on a bridge that's like, "Hey, if you follow the rainbow stones, you'll get treasure." And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, and he
"Oh,
kicked me into the swamp. Yep, yeah. I
yeah."
did that.
No, it's like it's just really good. Like you really hit the nail on the head. Like it's they built this like there's kind of only one way to go through the game. There's a series of required bosses that kind of have to be done in order. Like you have to go to the capital in order to touch the thorns, and then you have to go to like Farum Missoula somehow, and then you burn the capital. You know what I mean? Like there are beats you have to do. but it doesn't care how you get to them, and it's like it gives you like 50 different options of how you want to do that, and then
Yeah.
doesn't really care which way you did.
Yeah.
Um,
And the fact that there's so many weird the teleports where there's a chest that you touch and it teleports you somewhere random is so neat to me, because it puts you somewhere you're not supposed to be, but your brain is like, what if I do explore this place? What if I want to
no,
be
it's
here?
brilliant. It's brilliant because this is another thing is like sometimes people ask me like, you like the world of Bloodborne a lot, why don't you play the games? You know what I mean? Like, you like the aesthetic of Dark Souls, why don't you play the games? And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, something something something, whatever, blah blah blah. But in my head I'm like, it's because the mimics fucking scare me. And I don't want to. I don't want to go near them. They scare the bejesus out of me, and I hate them, and I'm scared. Like I will cry, and that will break my controller, and those cost like $80 in this
They're so
economy.
expensive now. Oh my
Like,
god.
yeah, like
I can't buy
I'm
a new
not made of
Switch Pro.
controllers.
It's like
Like,
$1,000. Yeah.
I'm not made of control. Like, I only have so many of these. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, and so for them to like, that's one of the things I think is just so brilliant about this game, is that they zoomed back and they were like, let's take a look at like the core facets of this game, because you think to yourself, in a typical RPG, treasure
Mhm.
chest, treasure. You see a treasure chest, you get good
Correct.
thing. And FromSoft is like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is really hardcore. Sometimes bad thing happens when you touch treasure chest, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You gotta be smart about it. And you're like, oh, that really changes the game. And now I'm not sure if it's a reward or not. And then they were like, okay, so the mimics are scaring a large part of our demographic away from playing our game. We got to do some market research to figure this out.
I don't know if that's why they did it. I'm actually curious as to why they didn't include mimics in this game. Maybe it's because they just didn't feel it would fit in the world building that they were doing, like just to have mimics. Because they actually have Dark Souls style chests in this game, and I checked every single one to double check if they were a mimic, because they have the exact same tells, and there were no mimics in here.
But like, that's they have the same sort of thing where they go, sometimes chest is bad thing. And rather than it being a monster that's difficult to fight, it's a place, it puts you someplace that you don't want to go. But secretly it's a good thing, because it puts you in cool places that you do want to go.
When it puts you on top of the Divine Tower and you can see the whole capital city, and you're like, whoa, and there's that giant on top of that, and you're like, what is happening? And it's so neat.
Yeah, I used that trinket that you got the entire the way through the game. It's so strong. And I know
That's the one with the healing, right?
Yes, I know what you're thinking, which is to say that 2 HP a second is factually not strong, and you're incorrect. But what is actually strong about it is that it means that regardless of how a previous fight went, I start every fight at full health.
Yeah, I can see that. I did like faith build, so I used it a lot at the beginning, but then later on, once you get some of like the better heal over time spells, it was great. I didn't need it anymore because I just had the better ones.
Yeah, I swapped it out for certain things. Like, if a boss fight lasts less than 30 seconds, then it's obviously not going to help me. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually at that point factually better to give me max HP, like, for the amount of health healing that's happening. But like, for just exploring for the bulk of the game, it means that I approach every encounter. I don't have to worry after I'm done with encounters about healing up. And over time, saving those flasks means that I was like able to play the game longer, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I will say that the fact that the game lets you explore all these different areas early and get you a glimpse of, just even if it's you don't get to fully explore it, just a glimpse of what the world is kind of like. You're like, okay, that's how you get there one way, but how do I actually get there? And it puts like the feeling of like adventure into your body. Where you're like, I got to figure out how to get to somewhere. I really like that. Plus, it was cool
it was so cool, and like the 4 belfries was perfect for this.
Like, oh my god! When you went to Farah Missoula, I literally stopped playing and put the controller down and was like, "Where am I right now?"
Yeah, like,
I'm like in some place where I'm flying.
In a sky tornado.
Yeah, like, and what is happening right here? It was insane.
I mean, this is a good segue to talk about I would say the big elephant in the room of this game, which is to say that for many people on their computer, it does not work. That this PC port is not good. Playing with a keyboard and a mouse is insanely difficult, and the control scheme is not suited for it. But
I've heard so many people tell me that they've had good experiences with keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, like from my experience, this game was actually non-functional in the computer that I use 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I play games on a Windows 7 computer, which this game does not run on. And shame on me for not reading the Steam minimum specs. That
Windows
one's on me.
7.
Yeah, I don't like Windows 10. It messes up my workflow.
Messes up your
But
video games. That's
it does
way
mess
more
up my video
important.
games. But don't never fear. Steam actually has a workaround for this. So I'm actually playing the game through Steam Remote Play into a Windows 10 computer.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
yes, which believe it or not, with a controller works flawlessly. Like there's actually not input lag at all. Nor is there like rendering lag. Like there's not a delay. It actually it works perfect.
Yeah.
Um, and Steam also reads controller data natively now. I know when I first started playing games on the computer like a decade ago, you had to get like third party tools like
Yep.
X360 CE and like map your controller buttons to like a fake keyboard, and then the video game would work. But now it's completely fine. You just you plug. I plugged my
Yep.
controller right into the computer, and Steam goes, "Oh, it's a Steam controller," and then that
Yeah.
was the end of it.
Steam is fantastic for like the configs and stuff too, where you can just like find somebody else who has a config for your controller type, and then if it's a popular game, there'll be like 100 controller configurations. You can just go scroll through them. It's very
Yeah,
convenient for that.
it was once I got the controller, it was fine. But this is actually why I picked my starting class. When I first started playing the game,
Hmm.
the mouse part of the video game did not work. I've suffered from what some people are calling a specific mouse-lick bug,
Mm.
that I believe was fixed with the latest patch, but I don't know. In which my game, for some reason, the DPI settings are natively messed up. You actually have to modify the DPI settings on the actual computer because the setting doesn't actually hook up to where the mouse is. Like that setting doesn't do anything. So if you move your mouse at all, it will spin you in a circle at a million miles an hour, and you cannot change it.
Mm.
Like the game doesn't work. It
Interesting.
just doesn't. Um, anyway, so I picked the Confessor because as part of this, it scrolled all of my options all the way to the right, and there was no way for me to change it. So I could only select from the last three classes. I could not change my appearance at all, or pick any starting item other than the amber medallion that it randomly put me on, I think, and I couldn't actually get it to do anything other than that.
Hmm.
And so I kind of just went in as Confessor because that was the only option that wasn't a naked person or a naked person.
So I ended up
Um,
picking the naked guy for
mm,
two very important reasons. I'm a live streamer, so I was like, "Hey guys, what class should I pick? The cool-looking samurai, the warrior, the prisoner with the thing on his head? Oh, the naked guy? Oh, yeah, okay, that sounds good to me." Um,
I understand that in certain situations it's statistically better because you've got more freedom when you start at level one. But I
yeah,
prefer to wear clothes in video games.
it's also harder when you start with a club as your only item. It is a little bit
Yeah,
harder. You don't have any variations when you want to fight the monsters. No armor means you take more damage. But however, you can obviously show off your character and intimidate opponents like that, which is what I did. And I will also admit, I spent so much time focusing on the aesthetics of my character and the way my beautiful character looks that I actually forgot to pick a starting item and had no starting item. So I didn't
that's
start with the
fair.
amber medallion or anything. I just my guy Vigo Pigeon. He was a beautiful man, and we made it all the way to the end. But yeah, no items at all at the start. It was a good one.
Yeah, I from what I understand, none of them are irreplaceable. Like they're not like no, these
Yeah,
items are all items that you can obtain in the game.
yeah. It's just
I
like a little
actually
boost head start.
yeah, and like I actually found a merchant really early on that was actually selling that medallion, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, like, hey, whoa, that's mine. Like you can't you can't sell me my own belongings. Um,
Uh,
but
so monster question. So because there's a lot of different monsters in this game, who would you say are monsters that you found like that you really enjoyed and monsters that you did not enjoy? Because I'm just watching the B-roll footage right now, and the monster on screen, these like bug looking guys, are the most terrifying, most awful creatures in the whole video game.
I would say I think everyone thinks of these very non-fondly because everybody went to the horrible gift shop in Caelid and lost all their money. Um, and where you get teleported to the crystal tunnel and then the guy
Yeah.
like spawn camps you. So everybody is like, yeah, I hate these guys because they robbed me, and I think that's fair. Like I think that's a insanely fair cop for awful.
Yeah.
Um,
I just don't like them because
Yeah,
they have the very fast casting like thread webs attack where they like burst out
yeah,
and it follows you. It's very hard to track. That's the only
I
thing
don't
I don't
like
like about
that.
them.
For me, I played most of the game with a straight sword, or two
Hmm.
straight swords. For me, what I didn't like about them, is that you hit them and then they just dodge out of the range of the straight
They
sword,
run
and
right back.
then
Yep.
yeah, and then I'm hitting air, and I'm like, not good. I don't like those. My least favorite enemy is probably dogs, like just generic dogs.
Dogs, they're tough. In every Souls
Dogs are
game,
tough.
I don't think they've ever changed the AI on dogs ever. They're just the hardest in every video game. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's rough because like this game put me in so many different situations where it's like I'm in the sewers and I'm like, guard countering these omen, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I'm doing really good and I beat Mog, no problem, and I'm like just feeling really good. And then I'm in the tunnels dying to rats and I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? Like I'm fighting a gargoyle, that's really cool. And then I'm in the town dying to dogs and like it's the mundane enemies that really
Yeah,
get you.
I agree. Some of the bosses are like kind of hard, but definitely some of like the area monsters were just like way more difficult than I was expecting, for sure.
It's yeah, the very frustrating patterns of dogs, where they don't stay very high poise, so they don't stagger very easily, and they attack very rapidly, so they stun lock you very easily, is very
Hmm.
frustrating. Like I don't like fighting dogs. I also don't like fighting dogs from like just purely like just a human being reason. Like I don't want to go kill dogs. I love dogs.
Well, that's
Dogs are
why
my
they make them look
friends.
like zombie dogs, so they're not. You don't feel as bad
Some of
about
them
it.
just look like regular fuzzy dogs.
Yeah, one of them looks like a dog that a buddy of mine owns, and I was just like, every time I'm like, oh, it's Charlie right there, but it's not Charlie.
So bad. Yeah. Um it's just something that I wrote very briefly about in like a very initial review is that I thought the bosses in these game, with one or two exceptions, were largely fantastic. I loved learning their patterns. I liked the grandiose fights and like being locked in an arena where you've just got to fight somebody. I think
Hmm.
that's great. Like I love that, and it's so much more fun with the bosses than I had, dying to pests in a place that slows you down.
Yep.
Current B-roll somewhat related,
Yeah.
like fighting that dragonkin. That was awesome. I loved that. That's great. Fighting the oh my gosh, what are they called? They spit death at you.
Yeah. In the swamp
The copy pastes from a different video game.
from Dark Souls 1 and 2 and
Yeah,
3. Yeah.
basilisks. There we go.
Yeah.
I had to
They're
wait for my brain cells to come together for that one.
I will say that in terms of the game itself and the monsters, I liked pretty much every monster in the game. My biggest complaint is not even the fact that they reused monsters. I was actually kind of excited when I saw monsters I was very familiar with and their attack patterns because I was like, oh, cool, maybe because I didn't know the story of Elden Ring until I finished it, right? So I was like,
Yeah,
and it's called The Lands Between. So my brain is working through all the story of the different games, being like, what if this is like an in-between world? So that's why you can see the different monsters, like the world exists as like a place, and so it's taking elements from all these different things. I didn't mind that. Where I ran into problems with the monsters was that there becomes a point about 2/3 of the way through the game where you don't fight new monsters anymore. And that's where it
yeah,
becomes difficult for me because I'm just like, there's no new monsters. It's just the same monsters every time, except now it's like, now there's two of them, or they just have more. They literally are the same but have more health. And
yeah. Or like you're like yeah, I think that some of the later game areas, in particular the snowfields and Michaela's Halleck Tree, were pretty egregious about this.
yes,
Um, and like although like everyone's riding through the game is so different. Like I was so over leveled. I killed Melania in 2 tries.
yeah, it
She
also
was
took me two
actually
tries.
no trouble. And I see a lot of people on Reddit getting sweaty about her, and I'm like, no big deal. Just be like level 160 and hit her with a hammer. Like it's not that hard. Like no whatever. Um,
Yep.
but like it's the unique fights are they were all just lovely. I loved the final boss. I had to do it. That was a good 10 tries or so, and by the end of it, I was like, I really feel like I got it. Like the last few moments were like the cinematic dodges of like the beams of light, and I got that last stab in, and it felt really good because I
Yeah.
feel like I got a chance to know what was going on. And there are some bosses like that horrible tree spirit. where I don't know what's going on, and neither does the boss or the
It's just
game.
rolling around and twisting and jumping, and you got to fight
Yeah,
like
and
30 of them.
I'm like getting like moved around without my consent. Like someone's shoving me.
Yep. I
And
love
I'm
that.
not taking any damage, and like I don't know what I'm doing this correctly or not. Like I had like arguably no trouble with those bosses, and I believe it's because they just have bad hitboxes on all of their attacks. Like I'm so used to things in this game, when they move you, that constitutes damage because like you're not moving under your own control. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
someone pushes you, that's like you did a bad thing. And then these guys are just like they're doing kung fu moves and kicking and rolling and jumping, and I can't see where I am anymore. And I
Yeah.
know I'm moving because the background's moving and like comical motion blur. And I'm like, well, just gonna
Yeah.
keep pressing L1 and whatever. So
My
those
favorite
guys
part
were
about those
terrible.
guys is not just that, but then they also, at some point, they explode.
Yeah,
And
see,
you're like,
I
oh,
don't.
sick. I didn't know this was happening.
Yeah, like similar problems happen with the fire giant, where you're like, this
Oh,
guy's.
that boss. I loved the fire giant. That was so cool. Easily one
I
of the
had
best
this
bosses.
I had this moment. So I'm fighting the fire giant, right? And he rolls away from me the first time, and I'm like thinking to myself, is that how like the rats feel when we roll away? Because you think about the scale here,
Yeah.
like the rats, they're coming in for an attack and they're so confident. They're like, I'm gonna blow this dude up. Like I'm gonna bite this guy so hard he dies. Cannot wait for it. And then you roll and you're a zip code away, and the rat is like whiffing, and it's like, wait, where did this guy go?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, he's so far. And same deal, like you're gonna hit the fire giant rolls away, something for him, which is pretty normal, like he's doing like a half somersault, And for us, we're like, oh, he's an ocean away. He's a trade route away. Like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go through customs to get to this dude. Like,
Yep.
oh no.
He goes so far away, and that boss, just the whole design of it. I'll say that all of the mainline bosses had
He hit me with a pizza pan.
Well,
He
he's got
hit me
the
with a
he's got the
pizza
giant
pan.
lid, and then when he gets, I remember when I was fighting the fire giant, I literally had to like almost cover my eyes at the point where he like tears his own leg off. I was like,
Oh, I
oh,
didn't look. I
yeah.
skipped that cutscene. He
I
puts his
didn't skip
hands
the
on
cutscene.
himself.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm
because
like,
I was just
no.
like, oh my god, what's happening? And then the stomach like has its own face on it. Because as I was fighting it, somebody's like, why is there a nose on its stomach? And I'm like, I don't know why. And then the eye opens up, and I was like, he's opening his third eye. He's opening his third eye.
God.
It was
So
dramatic.
the worst part is I saw that coming because I farmed out an armor set in mid game that's like the fire monks, and there's the fire giant's face is on your stomach.
Yeah.
And like that's like on the description of the item, is like these guys have big mouth on stomach, and I'm like, oh, noted for later. So I was unsurprised. But I found that entire sequence just disturbing.
Yeah.
Like kind of like if you, this is kind of a deep cut, but it's like watching the Fan-Fourtastic movie by Fox. I don't know if you've seen that, the one that's terrible.
No, I have not seen that movie.
Fantastic Four movie. Okay, so part of the reason it was so bad is because are you familiar with Mr. Fantastic, the guy, the stretchy guy?
Yeah, stretchy guy. He stretches.
Okay, so if you try to make that work in live action, it looks horrifying. It's the worst thing you've ever seen in your entire life.
Oh, I
Like,
bet.
think the Godskin guy, but like that's a human being. Like, yeah, it's so bad. Like, if you saw a human being do that, you'd be like, that's a problem. Like, I don't like looking at that. So for some reason, they decided to add horrible bone snappy sound effects to whenever he was stretching and bending. And so now you get the impression that this guy is breaking every bone in his body while he's moving around. And it's exactly the same as how I felt when this guy was ripping his leg off. I was like, I don't want to see this. Like,
Yeah, that one.
like,
That one messed
so
me up.
bad.
Yeah, so that one messed me up. And then what else? Pretty much every
Radon
boss
was
is
great.
amazing. Radon was
great.
fantastic. So
I
something
beat
I
that
like.
dude in melee. I beat that guy with a sword in my hand.
Well, something I
like-
really like is the fact that Radon and a lot of bosses give people different like levels of trouble. So, for example, I had a huge amount of trouble with Radon. It was very
Me too.
difficult for me. But for some, he was not that difficult. And I really like that different builds actually struggle at different points. Like, for me, a boss I had a lot of trouble with was Malacath, the Black Blade. And
Yeah.
Malacath was very hard to beat. But I beat it, and I felt super triumphant. But then I had to talk to other people, and they're like, oh yeah, he was easy. I just did this, and I went in melee, and I was playing like largely a spellcaster with some melee kind of on the back half, so it was very, very difficult. And I like that the bosses actually, some of them just specifically will be able to target different weaknesses of characters and things. And Radon is a perfect example because I was spellcasting. He's too fast. I can't hit him. What's up with this stupid tiny horse? I don't like this guy.
He skates around like he's got his butt on like a skateboard or a roller skate.
Yeah, he's on that thing that was the little scooters you used to use in like elementary school or whatever.
Oh, in gym class?
In gym class,
like
yeah.
The 4 little wheels?
Yeah, with the 4 little wheels. He'd be sliding around on one of those, and this guy was so annoying. But then I went in on melee, and I just kicked his ass. And it was so satisfying.
That was, I would say, the only boss I really had to struggle for. And I actually began documenting my attempts. I would take screenshots of how close I got, and I have some embarrassingly close screenshots. That's another thing to mention. Multiple times during that fight, I died simply due to the horse dismount bug, where you get on your horse, but then you just kind of hang there, and then your character dies.
Oh, I've never had that problem. Cool.
I took screenshots of it, just to prove that I'm not bad at video games. That this was
no, guys,
outside assistance.
Yeah.
Well, like I keep saying this. This is something that came up the entire way through the game. Is I would fight somebody, and then they would do like sword moves, and I would be like, okay, no problem. And then they would do kung fu. Like everybody in the entire game knew kung fu but me.
Mm-hmm.
And that came up so consistently through the entire game that I get to the very end with Godfrey, and then I was like, okay, fine, somebody with a weapon that doesn't do kung fu, and then he does kung fu and suplexes me, and I'm like, great.
Yeah. I actually really liked the Godfrey fight. That was a lot of fun. That was a good one.
I don't understand why he killed his lion like that. That was also disturbing and bad. I think that was unnecessary and didn't make any sense.
Well, it's because it's like a sense of desperation because he left. He left creating the Tarnished, and then he decided to come back and reclaim his place as Elden Lord, and so he couldn't lose his spot. So he had to do anything.
Why kill his ghost friend that was helping him out?
Because he needed the power.
Take all his clothes off.
Because he needed the power. It didn't work. He still lost.
Yeah, I found him pretty easy. Radon was just so cinematic though. Like I was really struggling with him. I actually even I was even talking to you about it. I was like, wow, this guy's really toasting my buns over here. You know what I mean? And you were like, go in melee, hit him with sword. And I was
hit him with sword. It's such a good plan.
Good strategy. It was a good boss fight. I don't like the implication that living jar is only alive because they put corpses inside of them.
Yeah, the thing about the story of the Souls franchise, so this game or any of the other ones, is that you have to kind of get over the fact that there is literally no such thing as a happy ending in the Souls franchise, and everyone in the entire story is a bad person. Even if they might have good motives, everyone does bad things to get to those good things. There's almost nobody that does a good thing just for the sake of being like no one's going to pick up a cup of coffee for somebody because it's the nice thing to do. They're like, oh, you need coffee? Oh, well, there's coffee people I could grind up, I think. That'd be faster. God. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because, Alexander was that was the only friendly NPC I've ever met.
Yeah, my boy.
Everybody else died or was evil. Or Volcano Manor had me kill. So I was like, yeah, good. And then I think his quest line at the time when I was playing, I was beating the game, didn't actually have any more data to it. And then he put a whole bunch of corpses inside of himself, and I'm like, I'm gonna get a restraining order.
Yep.
No, it was good. It was a good game. Really good game.
I find that this story, it can take a depressing turn all over the place, and it does get kind of grim. I appreciate the one thing I like about this game in contrast to some of the other Souls games, which I know you haven't played, but is the fact that the world is at least kind of sort of there. like still people are succumb to madness and things don't work and whatever. But at least there's like some remnants of something versus like the Souls world where usually there's not even a single person to talk to. There's like actually like stuff to do and places to go, and there's different people all around the world trying to actually do something. And I also do like the ending and the implication that the whole point is that your character is the catalyst for a major change because what's going on right now isn't working. Whether that change is
Dark Soulsian, like it's a cyclical worlds. They build like very worlds of cycles, and then your character is the one that makes the pivotal decision.
Well, so it's interesting. I don't know if Elden Ring is cyclical of sorts because you don't have to form the Elden Ring.
Oh, I didn't. I blew the whole thing up.
Exactly.
I went on bad ending number 1. So I killed the guy from bad ending number 2.
So I don't know if it actually is cyclical in that you have to actually like reform it and the story continues to go like that. I think that there is some level of like disconnectedness. Like I don't know if they can make an Elden Ring 2, if that makes sense. From the way that the story is set up.
I also have a really hard time, like, because people were like, oh, I can't wait for the DLC or whatever, and like neither can I. I'm assuming it's going to be great.
It's probably going to be great. I'm excited.
It's probably going to be great. But I don't know where they would actually place that because the ending of my character was pretty conclusive. I killed everybody on the planet, I think is what actually happened there.
And everybody dies.
Everybody pretty much died.
Yep.
And have you actually like seen the Frenzied Flame? Like what you actually do to get it?
Yep. Yeah, I have.
I was really impressed with that they changed your base character model. I think that was good. I think that was a really good like stylistic choice. I think it was very important.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact they make you take your clothes off so you must notice is really funny. Like I'm assuming that they went through this and they were like, yeah, and then your character gets burned and you get glowing eyes and you have these scars like the whatever his name is, Vike, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The fingerprint stuff.
Yep.
But people don't take their clothes off in this game, or at least I wouldn't have. You know what I mean? So
I never would have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to the actual ending, the only thing I'll say that I was disappointed about the ending, all of them make sense and they all feel good. I was just kind of shocked after I finished it. Do you know all the endings of the game?
I mean, I can guess. This
so
kinda,
there's 6 endings.
I'm not going to say predictable. But,
the second we finished, I watched the rest of them on YouTube. So the one that I got is with Ronnie because I was like, oh yeah, I'll do what Ronnie says and create a world of cold darkness and loneliness. Seems dope.
That seems pretty evil.
It's not evil. It's just you're creating a world of loneliness. That's all. It's just standard coronavirus whole 9 yards. I made real world. But then we went on YouTube and watched it. There's the ending you got, the ending I got, and then the other 4 endings are literally shot for shot identical with a different color filter over top. Same text and everything. And I was shocked. So big spoiler. I'm not going to tell you what the ending is. But it's just like, so I'm assuming that's because they want to do a continuation with it somehow with DLC or whatever. But I was like, really? Oh man. I'm imagining you finish because you have to get the other endings, you have to do so much stuff. There's like involved storylines and characters. You have to go to different places. You need to do specific times. You need specific stats in some cases.
Yeah,
and then you finish it. And the ending, one ending is literally word for word, shot for shot, the same. And you're like,
What about like I thought there was a different, unique one that was the Dung Eater, as it were.
No, sadly, that one has one different shot. It has one different shot where instead of it has like a shot of like a graveyard for one of the 3 shots, as opposed to a shot of the front of the city.
I gotta say, I mean, this is like I would say this is my first real piece of like objective criticism here.
Yeah.
I don't know why FromSoft would make a character like that and then name him like the PP Poo Poo Man. I think that's just really stupid. They really took a lot of the weight out of that character, and if they really wanted to make him intimidating, I think they kind of botched it by making his name so silly. Like,
it might have been a mistranslation, maybe, but it was a Gur Martin who worked on it, so I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Like, there's got to be something better than like, hey man, I got that weird gross fetish, and you're like, gross, dude. Like that's don't talk to me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Why?
so
We're on lunch
don't
break. This is not the time.
yeah, like like actually I'm getting a restraining order. Like don't come near me.
Yeah.
Um
Did
yeah,
I like I can kind of agree with that. I found that I don't need every character to be super serious all the time. And in this game, levity is always nice every once in a
yeah.
while. But I actually almost didn't interact with the Dung Eater at all. And I didn't even do his quest line because I was like, I don't want to talk to this guy. So then when I ended up finding him in the sewers, I just instantly murdered him because he's like, I want to spread curse or something. I'm like, that seems bad. So I just straight up murdered him on the spot.
Making a real moral choice right there. You're like,
It's
hey,
like he's like, I'm
that
gonna
guy
kill
seems like a
people and
serial
then I'm gonna
killer.
put curse in their bodies. I'm like, that's disgusting. You're going to jail. You're going to
Yeah,
jail.
going to hell jail.
Yeah, hell jail,
Um,
exactly.
no, that's what happened to me. So I had this really fun Layandell sewers experience, right? Where I was like,
Mm.
okay, I want to get this man out of this place so it could stop scaring the poor spirit tamer.
Yep.
Like I gotta get this guy out of here. He's really harsh in the vibe. And he says, "Come fight me IRL. I'm in the sewers. Here's the key." I'm like, "No problem, easy peasy." So I go into the sewers, and it's like a whole dungeon. And
Yep.
I go into a separate dungeon within that dungeon, and
The
I'm like,
sewers
"Okay."
suck. I hate that place.
Yeah, and then I find the boss at the bottom of the dungeon, and I'm like, "Okay." And then I find the secret area at the bottom of that, and I find the secret thing at the bottom of that. And at that point, I'm like, I don't think the Dung Eater's fucking here. Like, I think he just told me the wrong place to go, just so I would come back and be like, "Hey man, where's your body?" He's like, "You stupid fuck. You went
Yeah.
and go fuck Mog, you idiot."
Yeah, that happened to me so many
should've
times
known.
where a character, and this is again a problem I think with the conversion of the standard soul storytelling where cryptic character says cryptic message, I'm in the place, and then they're like, okay, cool, but awesome, the whole place is explorable. Downside, the whole place is explorable. I don't know where to go. Where am I supposed to look for? What am I supposed to find? What do
Yeah,
you mean?
it was killing me. Like going through Millicent's quest, right? And this whole thing is
Well, I
clearly
remember you
structured.
were talking about like, oh yeah, Millicent and something's gonna be here, and I was like, you talked to Millicent, right? And you're like, I'm in the Hallig tree, and I'm like, yeah, but you gave her the arm, and you're like, no, and I'm like, you should go find Millicent.
It's killing me. So it's like this quest is like so you talk to Gowry who's like, "Hey, there's a lady who's dying of rot. Go get this needle." And you're like, "Right, got it." So you get the needle to come back, and Gowry's like, "Hey, come back in a little bit because I got to turn into something else." And you're like, "No problem, buddy. I'll come back." So you come back and you get the needle, and he's like, "Hey, this lady's in there. Go get the needle." And you give the needle to the lady, and the lady's like, "Hey, thanks." And then she goes, she's fine. And you talk to her again, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna leave. Thanks for the needle, and no problem."
Yep.
And then that's when the trail went cold because what I was actually supposed to do is go back to
You have
Gowry
to go back
one
to
more
Gowry.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but here's the problem though, is I did, and he turned into a shop no problem, and I was like, yeah, okay, so I guess the quest line is done. What I was supposed to do is leave and come back one more time, and then he's gone, and Millicent is there,
Yep.
and then Millicent's like, hey, where's Gowry? And you're like, I don't know. Why did she ask Gowry? I don't know. And then why did you think I would know? And then Gowry's like, I was here, but I was hiding because I didn't want to.
He was just hiding. He was on the under the floorboards. He was just being sneaky, you know.
Yeah, I just didn't want to talk to
Sneaky
Millicent.
old
I
man.
hope you understand. And then she's in just incomprehensible places, and I was apparently, I think what was supposed to happen is that you're supposed to do all of this before you go to Lernia, and then you kind of run into her as you're gradually going north. But at that point, I had already explored the entire place, so I went to every single fast travel point, and then I was like, I'm just looking this up. Like I don't know where she is. I don't know how I'm supposed to find her. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like she's in a snowfield and is like, oh, whew, thanks again. You're really cool. And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like I'm just like playing a weird hide and seek game.
Yeah, there were a
Like,
whole bunch of quests I never finished because of that exact problem. Where like I talked to a person a few times, like Roger. The first time I never found his blood spot, so I could never actually do his quest line. I was like, I don't
even know
what's
what that
happening here.
is. Like
And
I found something else and then Roger just straight up died and like whatever. I didn't need him anyway.
yeah, I remember I went to where I did everything for Fia's quest line. So, you know, I went to the Underroot area and I did the whole quest, which is on screen anyway. So I did all that stuff and I beat all the bosses. Except for the fact that I never did Fia's quest line. I never talked to Fia because she hugged me and gave me a thing that made me lose my hit points. I was like, ooh, this lady's bad. And so I never talked to her ever again the entire game.
Yeah,
And then
like
so then I
that's
finished it, and then I'm like, what the heck? And somebody in chat's like, oh well, my Fia was here. So I went back to Fia, I did her entire quest line, then came back, then I got to fight the secret boss, and I was like, oh, there we go, perfect.
Yeah, it's like the same deal with like, because I did the Madness ending first, and like it's this is like a huge flaw with an open world game is that's like the lady that wants the grapes, right? She teleports further north
Literally
the
never
more you
found
give
her.
her.
I'd never found her.
Well, too bad.
I had so
Like
many
that,
Shabiri grapes, and I was
yeah,
like,
like that's like what Elden Ring says is like, hey, you didn't go in the exact right order. You suck. You should have thought better before you decided to play the game in your own order rather than looking it up. Um, and like that's not really a bad thing,
yeah,
but
this
like
this game
you think
definitely lends
about
itself to looking it up.
yeah, but like that's the thing though is they have the tools to fix this problem because it's like the Ronnie thing. Like I got the impression that the game got nervous. I hadn't talked to her yet and was like, we're gonna give you a separate quest and that's definitely gonna let you talk to her because it was identical after I had actually talked to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because it was basically that quest with Roger existed specifically to make 100% sure that I had met this NPC. Like really, really wanted to be sure that I knew this person was there.
Yeah.
And so doing that with other NPCs, like say if you miss the Shibari Grapes lady, you give her the first one and you're like, that was cool, and you never see that NPC again. Like she's just gone. She's vanished off the face of the earth. I had to Google where she was 4 times in a row. Um, and then later on, if the game figures out you just straight up haven't talked to her in a while, is like, what if another NPC shows up and tells you where she is, but then you could find that NPC, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or at least just
And
give
then
you a
it's
vague idea somewhere. So, like,
yeah,
imagine, you know how the game is separated in different areas? So you have, like, Liurnia and all these other
yeah.
areas. When you brought your cursor over to Liurnia, it would give you a list of the NPCs that are in that total list of NPCs that are in that zone. They don't tell you where
Yeah,
they
I
are,
mean,
but they would just go, "Oh, the lady for the grapes." Again, I never met them. I don't even know who it is. I didn't do that quest line at all. I thought the grapes were for the blind. So there was that blind girl going south towards the castle, whatever it is, where the
oh yeah, different.
miscreations.
Would you believe
Different
different
blind
blind lady
woman,
that dies?
different blind lady. But I was trying to.
Different blind
I was
lady.
like, eat the grapes. I have these grapes. They're for the blind. I think that didn't work.
Yeah, like it's. I don't even think you have to go like a metagame with it. It's more that like other NPCs could mention this as part of their dialogue. Like,
Oh,
you
I
know what
ran
I
into this
mean?
guy over here, and he's really creepy. He was eating dung, but anyway, he's in the sewer.
Yeah, and like so you get like a second opinion kind of a deal. And that
Yeah,
what that means is you got twice the chance to run into some sort of clue.
yeah,
Like I think that would go a long way. I mean, like I don't. This is something that I've heard said about this game. And I think is really really apt. Is like part of the reason that this game works so well is because they had this really big world and it's full of really cool stuff.
yeah.
And the game does not actually care if you actually see any of it or all of it.
Yes.
Like you miss something, and for better or for worse, sometimes for worse, sometimes for better, it doesn't make a point to like make you go back and do stuff.
Hmm.
And like that, what that means is that subsequent playthroughs still have this like magic because you go in a different way because you're like, oh, I never actually went there, and then you find new things, and it's like it has the capacity to surprise you,
Yeah.
which I think is really important.
So I just started a new playthrough of the game on Friday. It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. And I found that I suddenly realized that I was doing things very differently than the way I was doing it before because I found an NPC of some monkey man in a bush
Yeah, I
that I
think
never
that's
found.
new. I
And
think
no,
that's
it's not
new.
new. No, he's in the he was there when they initially released the game. He's some dude in a bush, and you have to do his quest line, and that's he helps you get one of the sewing needles that you change the armor and customize your gear. And I
So
had no idea.
I also started a new playthrough recently. I'm playing as a bandit with 2 daggers. It's really really fun.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I haven't tried dual wielding yet. Should.
Dual wielding is really good. This is just another example of where I feel like FromSoft needs a little bit of help. The game doesn't tell you, or at least it didn't tell me, that when you've got 2 weapons in your hand, you have to press L1 to attack with both of them, not R1.
Yeah, because R1 is the main hand and L1 is the dual wielding.
Yeah. So it's kind of the same vibe as somebody buying like an HDMI cable, and then plugging it into their integrated graphics rather than their graphics card, in which I was dual
That's I
wielding.
Oh, that's such an experience. I've seen that before.
Yeah, I was dual wielding and I was like, huh, it really looks like I'm just hitting with one sword. And I had like placeboed myself. I was like, nah, can't be right. Like I'm swinging both swords with the animation. It's gotta be working. And then color me surprise, turns out that's the wrong button to press and there's a button to dual wield and I just hadn't done it. So there
So
you go.
I agree, and I think this is actually a problem of. I don't think this extends to just FromSoft games. This is a modern game design problem. So, two things I want to address here that I think are interesting comparisons. So, you could make the argument that people used to figure these things out on their own 100,000 years ago.
Yeah,
When
the
they would
Dark
play
Ages.
in the Dark Ages, where they would play games without the internet, and you would have these like big expansive worlds. And if you got stuck, or you went and bought Nintendo Power or something, right? So
Yeah.
you had to figure out what you were supposed to do. But nowadays, with the modern games, it's I think one of the bigger problems about getting stuck or not knowing what to do or not knowing where to find an NPC. This game is gigantic, and it is way bigger than like Zelda 1. Sure, Zelda 1 had some secrets, but it is not even close to the scale of like Elden Ring is in terms of just total volume. Because you can swing your sword at every different corner of the Zelda 1 to find the secrets, and you can't do that in Elden Ring in the same comparable amount of time. But even still, as like a second point, another benefit of the older games is they would always come with a manual, which was this thing that you got to read in the car ride
It had
home.
the controls written out.
Yeah, and you'd read it because your mom would be like, well, you can't play until Friday because it's a school night. And so you'd sitting there all week reading the manual over and over, learning about the characters, what all the monsters are named, the gist of the story, looking at the artwork for the game. You're looking at all these different things, and you would have the control information. I didn't know how to two-hand in this game, so I spent most of the early part of the game playing with a club in one hand because I couldn't figure it out. I pressed everything, and it's like
I had to phone a friend. I was like, hey, how do you shoot arrow?
Yeah, and
like,
then,
hey, my bow doesn't work.
Yeah,
what am I doing wrong? Oh, you gotta hold a button to hold a button down, and then
triangle,
you
and then and I was like, what the?
Yeah, obviously, like this whole game is full of stuff like that. That like I'm not gonna call them like gotchas, but it's like it's almost like the game is like you're like, oh wow, I finally figured out how to fire an arrow from my bow. You have to like hold down a button and then you hold down press R1 and you're allowed to dual wield something and then there you go.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the game is going, yeah, you dummy. You should have figured that out 20 minutes ago. Like wow, look at you finally catching up. And I'm like, no, I'm just trying to play your game. Like I'm just trying to enjoy it. I'm sorry. Like oh my god.
So that's why I feel like something like this could actually benefit from a physical box and a physical manual. Because if it had an actual release, like I don't know if you could buy it in store, no clue.
Yes.
But on Steam, there's no book, there's no manual, there's no instruction guide.
It's a modern game, so it's like it comes in a physical release if you really want that. But I believe it's just empty. It's just the disc.
Yeah,
and even then, it's like when you buy a game nowadays, you're buying a disc, and then there's like day one updates. You know what I mean? So you actually can't buy it offline.
Well, it's like if I get a control anyway, so like when I can't figure out how to do something in a game, my first thought is hit the keybinds, figure out what the controls are. Yeah. But it's not a keybind because it's whatever the tap the head-up display button and the pickup button and the attack at the same time. And I was like,
yeah. Also on the PC version of the game, some of the settings are just kind of wrong. Like there are a whole bunch of them that are in the sound category that are distinctly non-audio related.
Yeah.
Things like, for example, for mouse controls, I'm playing on like the computer that I was playing on. The DPI setting, as I mentioned earlier, just doesn't work. Like it doesn't actually correspond to how your faster mouse moves.
Yeah.
And like I get it. Like out of everybody in the entire universe, I would say I'm one of the few, not one of the few, but one of the people that can really empathize because making a game that works is very, very difficult. Yeah. There's 1,000 different computers out there, and making something that works on them is hard because they're all different. And like I get it, you know.
Yeah, I will say that in terms of like level of doneness, I'm very impressed with Elden Ring. Maybe it's because as gamers we're just so beaten down by like all these shitty game companies. But after playing, Cyberpunk 2077, a game that's still not done right now, they added a massive patch. They added so many things and bug fixes. The game's not even complete and ready for DLC yet because of how incomplete it is. Versus Elden Ring, where at least for the most part, I encountered very few bugs. The few that I did encounter were more funny than anything else, or like than game breaking. They were rare, and yeah, there were frame rate issues for sure, and there are obviously user interface issues, but like the game was done. I was impressed.
Yeah, and what's crazy about this is at launch, the game is verifiably not done. Like, the guy from House Haslo, his quest,
Yeah.
turns out is just straight up not in the video game. Like, they didn't include it.
Well, but I would
Like,
prefer that than like getting an unfinished buggy feature that was missing.
yes.
Like,
No, I mean, like, that's smart of them.
yeah,
Like, they're like, in their heads, they're like, we don't have enough time to put this game together 100%. Like,
yeah,
we simply do not. Like, you got to get it all the way. We have to get this, like, ready for a physical release, which means, like, a 6-month lead up time. You know what I mean? This is launching on consoles, so there's a huge negotiation and stuff like that.
yeah,
We're not going to get it all done. And they prioritized play feel over content breadth and depth.
yeah. And
And
adding
I
a
think that was
quest,
smart.
yeah, and adding a quest in later as well for me and from my perspective is good
That's
because
new
it means
content.
it's now I
New
can do a
content.
second
It's
playthrough and I
great.
can finally assist the great Kenneth Haidt. I don't know what his
I
quest line does, but I'm gonna find out.
Yeah, it's like I don't I honestly I love it when games add things in because
Yeah,
like, and I'm not just saying this because I work on a live service game and we add things in, and that's how we engage our audience. But like the idea that that people can go in and make a game better post launch, that's great. That's a huge benefit of the game systems we have right now. Is the idea that like games can just get better, and that's wonderful.
yep.
Um, and this game does not have far to go, like to be pretty much perfect, I would say. I do have some. I'm not going to call them complaints, more like gripes that I would love to get into. I have some visual aids that
Okay,
I've
yes,
prepared.
I would love to see. Show
All right,
me
I
the
will send.
vision.
I'll send them to you so you can pull them up on the screen here.
Okay,
So gripe number one, there's no visual aid for this. Is that the way they put together their armor stats makes no sense and I hate it. I don't like that I found hundreds of armor pieces that look
yep,
fantastic that are objectively worse than what I was wearing.
yep.
I don't like the fact that I felt like I couldn't upgrade my armor for the majority of the game because I was already wearing good stuff, and then I just got worse things, and then it just felt really bad. And I don't like that at the very end of the game when I was ready to fight the final boss, I was wearing bad looking stuff, and then I had to make a choice to wear something that looked better because I wanted the ending cutscene to look perfect. But I actually sacrificed stats for that, and I feel like that's just not good. Like,
So I think that the fact that this game has no cosmetic system like a lot of games do, I'm actually okay with that for the main reason that I think it's perfectly fine for there to be a few games that don't just let you look however you want. You actually have to think about the stats that are on the equipment as part of the whole. And people actually come at this from such a different angle. I played the game on largely medium load, rolling around and doing things, but then you watch YouTube videos of people beating the exact same bosses, and they got the big tower shield, they got the big armor, they just block, they get hit, they take almost no damage, and then but they can't roll at all. And they're basically just walking around stabbing stuff, and they can't do any rolling, and it changes up the formula. I will say that I think that the armor contribution and the stats are hard to understand. Like they just don't clearly show you how big of a difference is, and percentages would go a long way. Like they do have percentages in the game, so
yeah.
make sure they're physically there. But when you go from like one armor piece to another armor piece, it'd be nice if it would show you like you're gonna take 2% less damage from this type of attack, as opposed to what it does, where it just says, oh, it has red on the number. And I'm like, wait, what was my original number? And you have to scroll through the thousands of items you have to get to the original number. And you're like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm
like
going from 48 to 31. Is that a big deal? And then you
yeah,
later on get
the
like the
defensive stats make no sense.
yeah.
Like they don't make any sense to me. Like here's a question for you.
Uh,
You're in the Burger King, whatever it's called.
Burger King?
Yeah, the Magic Academy.
Yeah. Ray Lucaria. Yeah, Burger
Ray
King.
Lucario,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you're
exactly.
getting a sandwich.
You're in a sandwich from Burger King, right?
Yeah.
And the Burger King attendant hits you with a cruise missile, and it's blue. So in your head, you're like, magic damage.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
Um, so like that makes it's clear, and you can kind of make an assumption. I'm not sure if this is true. It's just a guess. That magic, like defense magic, corresponds specifically to like blue spells. and fire to like red spells. You know what I mean? Like it all kind of matches up elementally. So increasing your magic defense doesn't actually do anything versus fire.
Right.
Is that right?
That is correct, yes. So every damage in the game has a damage type, and getting armor versus that damage type reduces the damage take from that effect. Color is
Okay.
not always the same, though, because, for example, later on you fight dragons that hit you with lightning, and it is red lightning. It's
Yeah,
clearly
I mean,
lightning, but it's red
I
lightning.
cast a lot of red lightning in my day. I found those incantations underwhelming, which is pretty disappointing.
Fortis Axe's Lightning Spear is one of the best spells ever. Big fan.
Oh, like his actual spear or the spell that's named that?
The spell Fortis Axe's Lightning Spear.
Gotcha. I
It's
know there was
good.
a lightning spear that you can get. It's like a legendary weapon, and you can launch it like a javelin, which is really fun.
Oh, I
Um,
think I had that. Oh.
yeah. But like then follow-up question then. So
Yeah.
keeping with the idea that each individual attack has its own damage type.
Yeah.
What does the physical part of that mean? Because there's physical and then there's physical versus like slash. Are those added together?
So the physical is like the way I try to think I think that they do it is like a general your general level of defense. So it's not actually the number, it's an approximation of what you have. And then the other numbers, your strike, pierce, and slash, are bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing resistances individually. So it's sort of like how the game is saying you have a certain level of total resistances that on average you'll take X amount reduced damage, but versus one type you may be different than another.
Yeah, see, like that doesn't make any sense.
No, I think that it's hard to estimate damage reduction, especially when depending on how the values scale. So somebody who's a big Path of Exile player, in that game, the way the damage works is the amount of damage you take is based on the amount of damage that you take. So the formula for damage reduction includes the damage that you're taking in the formula, which means that for bigger hits, armor is less effective because a larger percentage of your damage reduction is based on how big or small the actual hit is.
Huh.
So as a result, when the game displays your physical damage reduction, it gives you like an average and it says, well, you have 15,000 armor. So that's like kind of this much. But if you take a hit for like 20,000, it's basically negating your armor. So you're taking the whole 20,000 anyway. So you have to figure it out, even though it would
Yeah,
give you a
like
percentage. I don't think it's how it works in Elden Ring, but I think that it's fine to have like a general approximation of your physical defense.
see, for me, I found the defensive stats insanely confusing. Like, I didn't really understand how
Oh,
physical related to physical versus slash. You know what I mean? Like, are
so
they?
the magic about all the Souls games, and this is something that you figure out really fast, is that your armor almost doesn't matter at all. The only good defensive stats are health, the block rating of your shield, which is very confusing because shields have different, like the guard stats, because there's like a guard boost and then the actual guard numbers, which they don't explain at all. Even when you read the menus, it doesn't explain it. When they have the little explanation button, you're like, help me, it's still confusing.
Just explain. It just pops up a box that says no.
Yeah.
And like,
And
they're
then
too bad.
the talismans, because the talismans just straight up give you a flat percentage. Like when you get the Dragon Great Shield talisman,
Hmm.
it's just like, oh, you just take 15% less damage. And it's really easy to understand. And you're like, oh, great,
Yeah,
perfect, thank you.
there's just a lot to unpack about it. I think that for me, it was very disappointing getting cool boss armor and cool stuff from enemies that were tough and finding rare things and looking at them and knowing that they were strictly worse than anything that I picked up in the last 20 hours of gameplay and that I would never be able to use them. I think that
Yeah,
a very simple cosmetic system where you just have alternate slots that you can equip cosmetics to, like you find a cool helmet, the stats kind of suck, put it in your like cosmetic helmet slot and then it displays over your helmet and then it just doesn't work in PvP. I think that would just solve all of my gripes. Like that would actually just fix all of my problems with that completely.
see, I don't know, because like when I was playing around with the armor, I would oftentimes start using a piece of armor or a type of armor because I wanted the stats on it. So maybe I wanted a helmet that looked a certain way, and then I would change out my other gear around it to fit the look, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but like at that point, I have to wonder why have stats on armor at all.
That is a great question. I still never understand it. In Dark Souls 1, And I think in Dark Souls 2 you could upgrade your armor and the stats were actually impactful. But starting in Dark Souls 3, they had a few pieces of gear that had like stats on them. So like it would be like this armor gives you like 10 faith or something, which they didn't have in the older games. And then with also, and same with Bloodborne, it was then almost exclusively cosmetic in Bloodborne. So I'm not entirely sure what the deal is. I think they just didn't know what they wanted to do with armor in this video game. They knew they wanted to have cool items. They just didn't have a plan for it.
From what I understand, this game was developed alongside Sekiro. Like timing wise, this game and Sekiro were in development, like at the same time. Yeah. And I don't know if they had armor in Sekiro. I know it's very
the only FromSoft game I haven't played, so I have no idea.
I hear it's very difficult. Like compared to like there's not like Elden Ring, one of its strengths is that there's a variety of play options. Yeah. Like you can approach the your fights from a variety of different like combat styles, as it were, or even like whole aesthetics. Like a magic user is obviously going to do something very different. But Sekiro, everyone is playing with the katana and the grappling hook.
Yeah. So this is actually a good question because I was curious about this. So I played all the games and I'm familiar with the difficulty on all of them. You have said you haven't played all of them, but you did beat Elden Ring. So how did you find the game in terms of difficulty compared to maybe the games you generally enjoy and like to play?
Well, I mean, that's complicated. Like, I don't want to, like, immortalize this on stream or anything, but, like, my favorite types of video games are games like Animal Crossing. I play a lot of Picross and Sudoku. Like, I'm that kind of gamer. Yeah. For me, video games are something that I can do with part of my brain so that my other brain that I'm thinking of can do thinking at the same time. So like this was very different than most games I normally enjoy. That being said, I have played Souls likes. Like I played Outward, which was really fun. And like obviously I played every single Legend of Zelda game. I loved Mario Odyssey. Like there's Odyssey. I play video games, like video games, but never anything like this. This game, the difficulties were entirely like I would get into a fight and I would press the wrong button, mostly because I'm very unfamiliar with the controller. I don't like playing with a controller. My hands don't fit around a controller. I don't have muscle memory for it. So I'd get into a fight, I would press down to cycle to my healing thing, and I would accidentally unequip my shield because I was pressing the D-pad slightly off center. Yep. And so at the beginning of the game, it was just like it was a kind of a nightmare because I was like fighting monsters and I was also fighting the controls and I was fighting my muscle memory of like something would happen and I would instinctively go, oh my gosh, my hands aren't on the mouse. Like, what am I going to do? Like, whoa, like that's not good.
That feeling is something that even as somebody who's played them all, I do that constantly. The worst is in this one, for some reason, they give you like 50 spell slots. So I'm out here with all my spells, right? So me and my spells, I got like 20 or 30
I started
of
leaving them blank. I could not. I'd be in a fight, I would cycle wrongly, I'm standing there for 20 seconds like a ding-dong.
Exactly, because you cast your spell, and then you're like cycling, you're like, oh, I missed it. I missed it.
Yeah, like, there's got to be a better way to do spell selection.
Yeah.
This is a semi-new type of control scheme. In which I believe it's called a radial, in which you hold down a button and then you flick a control like a D-pad, or you flick like a joystick, and the direction you flick the joystick while the button is held down selects from a choice.
Yeah, that's very, very new. They haven't had that since Nintendo 64.
It depends on the type of game. Like they add this like Satisfactory, for example, in which like you tap a button to cycle through it. Or you can press and hold that button and it opens a radial, and then you select with like your directional which one you want. Yeah, and this is perfect for that.
It would be great. I agree. Yeah, it would be great for that. That's a very old. I'm pretty sure that's how they've done it since like Ratchet and Clank 1 and all these other things. It's a very old design. The scrolling through each thing. The only thing I will say about that, and this is one of the things that kind of sucks when you talk about game design in terms of the controls. It reminds me a lot of like Resident Evil and some of the older Resident Evils. The controls in those games suck. They absolutely suck. They're terrible. But they also make the game a lot more stressful and tense because each moment is more impactful, and working with the clunky control and making a mistake, it's something you know how to do, but you're stressed, and your stress causes you to make a mistake, which puts you in like the shoes of the character, if that makes sense. It's almost like the storytelling is happening through the control. I mean, I'm sure they could have come up with a better system, and I would have liked it. but I can also see where it comes from.
Yeah, I understand why this game is controller only because of how you kind of need, like, there's just a lot of things that's going on. Like WASD doesn't give you very good directional controls. Like, you want to dodge in a diagonal, a control stick will do you fine. But WASD getting that exact angle, why, like, how do you like quarter hold down W in order
Yep.
to get like halfway there? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you don't WASD limits you to 8 directions, and that's it. You only get 8, and a control stick is the full 360. And this is a game where that really matters. Like, it
Yep.
really full 100% is
Well, range of
like,
motion is really, really important. Yeah.
it is. It really is.
Well, for any game with like movement like this, controller is just kind of the greatest thing. Like, I'm a big keyboard and mouse sort of fella, so I'll play all my games keyboard and mouse. But the second it's like third person action game, nah, I'm putting the controller on instantaneously. Because just being able to control every direction you move and modify your speed very easily with the stick is so much better.
Yeah, that's another thing, is like tilting for precise platforming.
Yep.
Like, that's something that a keyboard does not do. Like, it just doesn't work. Um, Gosh, I have some other gripes. There's too many stats in this game.
Too many stats.
Yeah, too many stats.
Like
There's
what?
just too many. Like the stat that gives you your mana. I think it's dumb. I think they should cut it. Same with the stat that gives you
Mind?
endurance. Yeah, I don't like it.
What? Oh, no. I think this is
Here,
probably the best organization of stats they've ever done in a Souls game of like something like this. 100%. I think the
I
stats
came
are
up
like
with
the
a
best
better
one.
one here. I drew it up in Microsoft Paint, and I can show you.
Okay, sure. Yeah,
I'll
share
send
with
you a
me,
visual aid. I need you to put it on the
please.
screen.
Yeah. Yeah, also I have to point out the insane irony of you somebody who works on DDO having an issue with the stats. The number of
We're
stats in a video
trying.
game.
We're trying really, really hard to trim down. Like, you have to, like, reducing complexity without reducing depth is something that is very, very difficult. And I'm not saying that I could do better than FromSoft. I'm saying that I am doing better than FromSoft. So I don't know. Um,
Okay, this is already confusing me.
no, it's really obvious. Like, I think you put it on the screen, I can explain it.
It's on the screen.
So,
Yeah, we got this.
the stream is a bit of a delay. I'm still looking at your B-roll.
Yeah, of me losing. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, just hit it F5. It'll come back. You see, you hold down the D-pad for a second. So yeah, and the thing is, there are hotkeys, right? So if you hold down up or down on the pad, it'll go to the first item in the list. So if healing potion is the first item, you hold down, and it'll automatically bring you to the first one. Same thing with up, the first spell. The problem is that's literally never told to you inside the video game. You got to read it on Reddit or have like the player's guide.
There's also like the stash system, where you hold down, use, and then you do the D-pad or do those 4.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here's my plan.
Okay.
So I am pretty sure getting it down to 6 stats would be better, and also renaming Arcane back to luck again. I think it was luck in previous games, and I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, it was luck in previous games. I think they called it arcane because it has some relevance to the world, because there are items that reference the arcane quality of things, and that arcane is not the same thing as sorcery, because sorcery is like a more spatial thing. So yeah.
Like spatial meanings from space.
From space, yeah. Like arcane,
Yeah.
like the sorceries are in this world are directly from space and influenced by the stars, whereas arcane and magical objects are not the same thing as sorceries.
Yeah, so I think that's cool, and I'm actually okay with it staying arcane. What I'm not okay with is that mind, faith, intelligence, and arcane are all magic-y sounding words and govern different areas of magic.
Yeah.
So I think that we should just get rid of mind and get rid of endurance and split up what mind and endurance do between the other things. So, like, mind gives you max mana. I think faith and intelligence should give you max mana, but at a lower rate. So it takes twice as much. And that way, if you're a faith build, you put points in faith, you get mana and you get faith. There you go.
So how would you interact with weapon arts, where or like the Ashes of War, where characters can level mind and never need intelligence or faith, and still have tons of mana so they can cast all of their things?
Well, they should pick one of those two, and then you'd have an excuse for even like big strong man to spec into some spells for like utility and stuff like that.
I
Like,
guess, but then you'd have like but then you're telling somebody that they should play different when the older system lets them choose.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like this gives them exactly what they were looking for before. Like, I mean, while we're at it, it's a little weird that the summons cost mana at all, since they're kind of like a meta thing. Um,
Yeah. This I feel like the only reason they did that is because they had to balance them somehow with like their power.
yeah, what it means is that it's like, say you're a big weapon dude, right?
Yeah.
You've just enough points in mind so that you can yeah, summon your electo, you know what I mean? Um and or like some wolves. And you don't have to put points in mind anymore, you're done.
Yeah.
And summoning wolves or not has no real bearing on whether or not you're able to execute your primary game plan, which is swing big sword.
Right.
But if you're a spellcaster, you're actually taking a huge hit out of the one pool you care about in order to summon stuff. But like, you don't benefit from summons more, I guess. Like, I guess you do on sort of a meta level, depending on enemy AI. But like,
Yep.
it's you don't put points into bell proficiency in order to equip the thing. It's just kind of a thing that you can do. And I find it a little weird that it has a material cost to it. I would definitely have preferred them to be much rarer and more difficult to upgrade, but like an optional free thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I
I
think
would like to have seen this as like the summoning system as a whole. You can put the chart away, by the way,
okay.
because that's kind of the whole what I got. Um, was like you just have like its own equip slot of like ashes or something. And if you enter into an area where you're allowed to summon, they just kind of come out with you.
Right.
And then you don't have to worry about summoning them. Because I never really felt challenged summoning them at the beginning of the boss fights.
Hmm.
Um, it is oddly enough, it's a mechanic that is more difficult the first run through a boss because when they're done with the cutscene, the bosses are actually in a different location than the subsequent times you enter their arena.
Yes. And
So like,
I
which is strange.
so when it comes to the statistics, as a Souls player, this game has less than any other game, so they are trimming them down because they've
Mhm.
had more in all of the other video games. Just thinking back to Demon Souls, which is a game that it's the most recent one. It came out on PS5. Um,
Yeah, next gen.
that one had equip load and carry weight as two separate stats you had to level up on two separate things. So the armor in your inventory and in your bag, all of those had weight too, and you'd have to take them and put them in the bank because if you had too much, you couldn't even play the game. So they have been trimming them down and paring them down in general. I think that I wouldn't hate the idea of removing it, but I also this is probably the best one they've done so far, and I honestly don't mind the disparity between the different stats. Although on the point of the summons, my issue with the summons and the issue I have with all FromSoft games is this whole problem where I can't use an item because I don't have the stats to use it, or I can't use an item because they went cuckoo bananas on the upgrades. So now weapons go up to plus 25. So like if I find a new sword, I have to get it to plus 25 to see if it's even good because I'm not going to know if it's good at like plus 0 because it does like
Yeah.
1% of the same damage. And so every time I got a new spirit, I never wanted to try it out because I'd be like, oh, cool. I want to try out this new monster that I found or this new thing. But I was like, well, but I already have my summon at plus 9. And my
Yeah, so
summon
it's like
is really
you're taking
good.
an automatic downgrade. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna talk about DDO. This is part of why Legendary Green Steel didn't land as well as Thunderforged. Is because fully upgraded Thunderforged things were better than the base weapon of LGS. So like LGS, you can craft your stuff, but it would take an insane amount of work in order to get it better than Thunderforged, but you already have your Thunderforged to this era in the game.
Yep.
And like that's a real thing. That happened with weapons across the entire game. So like, I'm rolling around in Limgrave, I'm hour or two in, you know what I mean? And I've figured out at this point how to put the controller into the video game part so I'm allowed to play the game again. So we're finally able to play the game. And I kill some guards, like some random level 1 guards outside the starting area. And I find this straight sword, this like Lord Sword and straight sword.
Yep.
I used that weapon until the final boss. Like, that was it. Like, that was the whole thing. I never found a better straight sword.
Did you use
And I
any
found
other weapons?
No.
Okay, because I had a similar experience where I didn't use a lot of weapons, but I used more than like one.
Well,
Like,
it's what happened to me was I would look up something online because I'm like, there's got to be a better weapon than this not quite starter sword. There's got to be. Oh, the golden epitaph, that looks awesome. So I finally get there. I upgraded to plus 10. It is statistically worse than my plus 25 sword. Like, it actually is a worse sword.
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, that was a big disappointment. I find the Eclipse Shuttle, which is like the that's the scythe. That's like
yep.
you know what I mean? Plus 10 that as well. Again, strictly worse than my Lord Sword Straight Sword with a like Sacred Blade weapon art. And like I eventually I was like, I'm gonna use Sword of Night and Flame because it's the only other straight sword in the entire game that's a guaranteed drop. And this one comes with a gun and was very good. And I used that to kill the final boss.
Oh, I never found that weapon. People who came into my chat were like, "Yo, have you seen this sword?" And I was like, "No," and I still have no idea what it does. I have yet to find it.
It's one of those things where if you didn't Google it, I would be hard pressed to believe that you found it. Um,
Yeah, I have
I
no
mean,
idea.
I don't know. It's like you got to go into Karaya Manor and you hang a right, you hang a right, you hang a right, and then you hang 14 more rights, and then you jump off a thing, and then I don't know.
I'm
You
sure I'll
find a
find it.
sword.
See,
Yeah,
I tried out so many different weapons. Like when I started out, I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna do a classic thing I do in Dark Souls games: get a fast with scimitar or some type of fast weapon, and then
yeah,
enchant it with like my scaling stat. So like if I'm a faith guy, enchant it with lightning or whatever, and then that way it's a lightning sword, and then I'll just use that for a while, no problem." But like I couldn't figure out how to enchant anything, and the Ashes of War system was like, I guess, more confusing to me than it probably needed to be. So I barely used them. And I also found that the claws, the inside the starter or in the round table hold that attack through walls and stuff. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
shield guys can go straight to hell. Get out of here. But then as I kept playing, I kept finding cool weapons. Like on screen for pretty much all the footage, I've got this big tail, this big magma worm sword that just drops
Yeah,
lava everywhere.
I beat that guy.
And
I find fighting those guys very fun in a cave and not so fun outside.
I think it's the exact opposite. I find them really fun outside, and I don't like it in a cave.
I It's really interesting. Like I that kind of boss reuse, I love. Like the falling star beast outside was the worst thing I'd ever experienced in my entire life. Like I'm sorry, let me back this up a bit. You know, I said I was struggling against Rodon. The real struggle was the full-grown falling star beast at the
But
top of.
it was so easy. It's just one falling
No,
star beast.
oh my god. I actually said the word unbelievable out loud 11 times in a row in like 20 minutes. Like I would die, I would say unbelievable out loud. That kept happening to me. Like he would run at me, right? I'm on a horse, right? I jump over him, like I'm clearly above him, and it would knock me off my horse, which doesn't make any sense. The hitbox is too high. And like if you try to dodge, he just leans out of the way and gets you anyway. And all of his attacks are timed, so if he knocks you off your horse, it's a guaranteed kill. I think it's the worst boss in the whole game. I hated that game.
Okay, I
Hated it.
I actually won. Are you able to lean to the other side of your camera just because you're behind
Oh,
your
I'm out
marquee?
of the way here.
Yeah, and two, I actually really enjoyed that boss, and I had a good time fighting it. It was very very fun. I like that one a lot. I will actually say there were a couple bosses that I found great and I really enjoyed, and a couple weapons. Did you ever use the finger,
Oh, the big finger?
the big finger?
No, I haven't. But no, I haven't.
So there's those Crystallian guys that like you need to hit them with bludgeoning weapons to like break their armor or whatever.
I
And
hate those
so
guys.
I remember the first time I fought them, I was like, oh yeah, this seems kind of difficult and it was kind of hard to deal with. Then I got the finger, and that one is you just give them the finger, tri-finger butthole.
Yeah.
Oh my god, tri-finger butthole times 1,000. This was the greatest weapon ever because you just go flick them and it knocks them down instantly, and you heavy attack them and they're instantly into their like stagger. Then you get them with the stagger hit, and oh my god, what I love the finger. But I never would have tried it because I thought it was like, oh, this looks kind of stupid and it looked kind of dumb.
It does like and that's the kind of the beauty of Elden Ring is that so many of the stuff is stupid.
Yeah. There's like 1,000 million weapons in this game, and because I think I would have preferred it if they had a smaller upgrade route where like they went to upgrade like +6 or something, where it's just shorter increments, or if they gave you like faster access to more materials, as it were, so I could
I
try
think
more
that
weapons. I spent too much time
yeah,
like not using 80% of the weapons in the game.
What they should have done was both. Like, there's two things I would say would, for me, help the weapon system. One is, regardless of whether or not something is unique, let them use Ashes of War. Like,
I agree. I wish you could Ashes of War whatever you wanted. If I want to change a
you should be
weapon,
able to Ashes of War whatever you
I
want. Like,
totally
you
agree.
just. And two, everything should use the +10 system, and you should just, whenever you get a regular smithing stone, you get a somber smithing stone, and don't worry about regular one.
Yeah, I don't know
And
why
that
they
way,
had
there's
to do
only
this
one.
like 1 to 10 or whatever with the different stones. I thought, or like where you needed 12 to go up the 3 levels versus just one. They should have just made it 1 and 1.
Yeah, I don't think there should be. I don't think there should be a distinction between like a special weapon versus a non-special weapon. Because some weapons are unique but require smithing stones, and some require somber. It's honestly pretty arbitrary. Um, and it should just be one upgrade system. Like, that would save a lot of complication. Like,
I don't mind the fact that like in the system that they designed it. So they said that you're going to have boss weapons or special weapons, and then you're going to have
mhm.
regular weapons, and the special weapons use a special upgrade material. I understand where they're coming from to let you know that you're upgrading like a special item. So I actually don't mind that conceptually. I just don't know why the actual upgrade path is different when all of the spirits that you get are 1 each, and the somber weapons are 1 each, and then the actual
Yeah,
regular smithing stones were a bunch each, which was just, it just seemed
yeah,
unnecessary. Like it was a holdover from the earlier games in the series where that's how they did it, and then they just decided not to improve on that system for whatever reason.
yeah. In my mind, I wouldn't mind the distinction if weapons that use somber smithing stones were much rarer. Like, if
Oh, there's
very
so many of them. Yeah,
few. Yeah, it feels like almost every single weapon I picked up required somber, and like, I like that over time they ease the requirements because they just let you like buy them.
yeah, just let
I
you
think
buy them.
that's great.
They should
I
have
think
made you
that's
let
great.
you buy them sooner, like
Yeah,
because you can only buy like the top ones like right before the final boss of the game, which kind of makes sense. But I think I got all the way to the final boss, and I can only like buy +4s, and then I did a tiny bit of exploring, and then all of a sudden, boom! Now I can buy like +10s, and I was like, I kind of wish I could do
yeah,
this slightly sooner. They even recognized that at the beginning of the game. They added a patch where they added a whole bunch of extra smith stones, and all the merchants can sell the basic ones.
yeah. I think that's smart of them.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I it what goes back to this is that it's like, whenever people talk about Souls games, I'm always enthralled by their systems because it's like, there's this simple thing I haven't seen in other games, which is, um, your money and your experience are the same currency, and they're both like lost on death. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I like it a
Like,
lot. Yeah.
I think it's just awesome, and I'm happy I got to play this game because I got to really try it out myself. And as I thought, it was great. Like, I loved it. Um, so, like, I have to wonder why, like, why not just let them buy it from the beginning, but they're really expensive. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, why can't I
that.
just farm it out?
Yeah, like, you can just farm it out, and that way you're not farming it out on like soldiers. You're just playing the game, and rather than leveling up your character, you're kind of, in a way, opting to level up your weapon.
Yeah. I will also say that I think a failing of the general system. So I've talked a lot about good things I liked about the game. One of the things I think they could have done better is the actual rune acquisition throughout the game. It is like you get almost nothing for the first 80%, and then the last 20%, every monster gives you like 3,000 per kill. Even the basic soldiers are giving you like the Halig tree monsters are not, they're literally the same model as the earlier monsters, and they're not even that much harder or have that much health. But oh my god, they give you like 3,000 to kill. But
Yeah,
the rest of the
I would.
soldiers are the same guys, just like with the tabards and the swords and shields and stuff, give you like 100 for almost the rest of the entire game. It was so confusing to me where I was like low level for a good chunk, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have 500,000. I guess I'll go bank them again or go buy some stuff.
Yeah, it
Like,
does seem strange. Like, that's the part of the game I love the most, is when you're still in that really early exploration phase, and you're like scrambling for money. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Oh,
And like, I
yeah.
loved that. I loved that.
I didn't hate that you're scrambling for money. It just felt like it dragged on for too long. Like pretty much all of
Mhm,
Liurnia and all of Limgrave and all of Caelid, and
mhm.
the only places that gave like weird amounts were like the Dragon Barrow, and even the giant area didn't even give that many souls by comparison.
I didn't like. I didn't. That's the thing, is I didn't have any desire or reason to fight anybody in the giant area. because it was like, go fight the horrible birds, and I was like, no, like
Yeah, no.
I simply will not. I refuse to participate.
Yep.
And I rode through it on a horse, and I beat the boss, and I got out of there.
Oh, you
Like,
didn't? Did you do the whole area? Did you fight the super hand? The
the
creepy
super
hand?
hand.
Yeah, there was one of those creepy hands from Carrion Manor or whatever, but it was
Yeah.
like a giant. It was like 50 feet across.
Terrible. I hate it. I don't want to fight it. I found the hands creepy, not in the same way that I think mimics are creepy.
Mm.
But the hands were strange. Do we actually get any story reason as to why there were big hands around?
So as far as I can tell, no, but I didn't find anything. I'm sure I'm probably wrong, and there's like a YouTube video that explains this entire concept. But yeah, I didn't find any story reason as to why there's giant hands in the manor, or whose hands they are, or where the
Yeah.
hands came from. I have no clue.
It feels like it would be easy to make one up. Like I can say right now, oh, obviously the mages of Karaya Manor tried to duplicate the two fingers and these horrible mutations are what emerged. There you go. I've made that up. That's not
Yeah.
actually true Elden Ring lore. That's
could
something
be.
I made up. It could be. Sounds like it, but I don't know. I don't know. It could be anything at this point.
Yeah.
Um
So when it comes to the
oh my gosh, we're watching the B-roll.
yeah.
This is my favorite big stone circle in the whole game. I laughed so hard when I saw this. I like there it's like that's this game is funny is what this game is. Like it has comedy in it that's just built in to the how the game is structured. Like you're in Noxcala, right?
Yep.
And you drop down and it's like, "Oh, there's a boulder. That's weird." And then the boulder rolls after you and you're like, "Oh, coming." And like
Yeah, all of a
get
sudden
out of the way.
you're literally fighting the boulder boss now.
Yeah, yeah.
I
and
didn't
that's
realize you could fight those at first, and then it just makes sense that it starts chasing you.
It's just so funny. Like that right there. That is comedy gold. And like all the silly ways you can die. Like you get kicked off of a bridge or something, and you like bonk everything on the way down, and you
Yep.
fall down and you blow up. That's hilarious. There's so much unintentional comedy here, and I think it's at its peak when you get into this room and you're like, there's a boulder at the top, and then the boulder gets arms and legs and starts casting spells at you, and you're like, I could sit here for 100 years and guess what that boulder is gonna do, and I would never guess that. Like that's
Yeah.
just really funny. That's just really, really funny. Speaking of things that are very, very funny, and I think were like unintentional comedy rather than
Okay.
intentional comedy. Pop quiz for you: how many arms and legs does a snake have? Like just on our Earth?
How many arms and legs? 0.
Yeah. See, I thought it was 0 too, and then I fought a snake boss that had a lot of arms and arguably one leg. I don't know. And then he had two faces, and they pulled a sword out of his mouth, and I was like, first of all, snakes have no limbs. Like you're not even, it's not even close to right. But it was just really funny. I laughed the entire way through the record fight.
Yeah, so the Rykard fight was an homage to earlier fights. It was one of those things where I know why they did it, because every Souls, or really not everyone, but most of them have a fight that's like that, where there's a gimmick to the fight, and once you know the gimmick, you can do it.
They give you a weapon.
They give you a
kind
weapon
of
that beats the boss,
yeah.
So you need to have some way to get through it. And it was fine. I was just kind of disappointed to like beat it on my first try, and I was kind of hoping.
Yeah, I had
that-
no trouble with him. I don't know if I was just way too over leveled or what.
Oh no!
But
Once you put on the spear, it's very easy. I'm sure it's actually
Yeah.
really hard if you don't just use the spear, but
yeah, like
They-
what happened to me is I was going through Volcano Manor and I was like, wow, there's a lot of snakes in here. You know what I mean? Like I wonder
So
if
many
Rykard's
snakes.
a big snake. I wonder what's going to happen. And getting into that thing, and then like they just gave me a gun. And then I used gun on snake, and the snake blew up, and I was like, okay, like I guess that was it.
Yep.
I thought that the face you're in a place I've never seen.
Yeah, I also
Um,
did not find the purpose of this. Also, it put me back down close to the beginning of Volcano Manor by accident, and I had no way to climb back up, so I had to teleport back and then refight everything. It was very
It's like-
irritating.
I've like not seen this. It's crazy. I think you're supposed to get over there somehow.
Yeah, and I will say that is something that I can always appreciate about this game in particular. Some of the Souls games, you usually find almost everything, and the things you don't find are like bullshit secret wall nonsense. There was not a lot of
Yeah.
bullshit secret wall nonsense in this video game. It was mostly like oh, you just didn't explore. You never went to this building, or you didn't go into this
Yeah,
town, or you didn't
like
go to this
I think
village.
I think that's what's so cool about it is like I'm watching this footage here and I'm like, wow, I can't wait to do this on my second playthrough. Like I can't wait. I'm so like I love this. These guys, by the way, these crawly dudes,
Yeah,
these are just they are from Bloodborne. Like I this is the one I saw and I was like, that's just a Bloodborne monster. They copy and pasted.
yeah,
Those are people with their eyes on the inside. Like 100%.
yeah.
Like
When I was playing through this, my goal is I was trying to connect this game to all of the other ones in the franchise by looking at the architecture. Like Stormvale Castle is very, very heavily, the architecture is almost identical to the architecture of the first castle in Demon Souls. And I was like, that's
mhm.
kind of interesting. And then a lot of the monsters got lifted from Dark Souls 3. And I was like, well, that's kind of neat. And then the music choices that they have is very similar to, especially the music in Farah Missoula, is almost identical to some of the music in Dark Souls 2. Like the same beats and even using the same instruments. And like, so there's like the xylophone part that's very similar. And Farah Missoula is like, I mean, this is a stretch, but it sounds kind of like Majula, which is the town. And I was like, are there connections in this game? The answer is no. They're completely disconnected. Sorry to spoil the bubble, but the whole time I'm like, there's a connection here, and like
I
all
mean
the
like
Bloodborne things, and yeah,
it does seem like on a meta level that like if Elden Ring is kind of like I would say that it's a real elevation of the Souls formula. Like they looked at what was working in the Dark Souls games and they were like, what can we build with these puzzle pieces to build something totally new? And I think that's part of why Ring works so well is because they're drawing back on everything they've learned. Like they have so much good data of what players liked and didn't, and what challenged them and what didn't. What feels fair and what feels unfair. And like I think that's really cool. And so in a way, them using their library of assets in a way that I think in other contexts would feel kind of blatant. For
yeah,
me, it's more like what they're saying here is like, yeah, it's a basilisk from Dark Souls, and you guys hate those things. What we can't make anything that's more evil. You know what I mean? Like we'll make
yeah.
new stuff. We'll make new stuff no problem. But like we're gonna use the best of our best to build you good levels, and we're gonna use the best of our best to put together like a good profile of monsters. And I think I think it's a very charitable way of looking at it. Because
It
it's
is.
like that's I'm giving them a lot of benefit of the doubt here.
They did also, the models are clearly nicer and they're more ups, like they're a high resolution. They didn't just use exactly the same ones. They did redo the textures and other things like that, even
mm,
for some of the existing creatures. Like the basilisks do look better than they did in some of their older versions, which is some game companies like Nintendo won't do for their own main franchise games. Like the new Pokemon came out and it used the same models as the previous Pokemon game that was not on Nintendo Switch, and the new one was on Nintendo Switch. Oops. So like that was a big problem. And so,
yeah.
or not even a big problem, but like just a noticeable thing. Whereas in this game, they put the effort in. I think that when it comes to reusing assets, there was a quote from like that I heard from like Chris Wilson, who does Path of Exile, and he was like, the trick isn't not reusing or like reusing assets or whatever. He said because every game designer in every city, every area is always going to reuse assets. That's just good business. That just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You already built this thing, just do it again. But the trick is making it so that it's always fun every time. It's new every time. You as a
Yeah.
player are like having a good time with your
Well,
new
it's like,
asset.
people don't complain when a Lego set reuses assets. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah,
like, oh, 2x2 macaroni, amateur hour over there.
yeah,
Like, oh, unbelievable. They did like a 1x2 brick. I already own 40 of those. Like, no, they're puzzle pieces to build a good cohesive whole. It's important like that it all fits together. And I feel like that's what Elden Ring really does. Like, there are definitely some parts where reused monsters feel out of place.
yes.
Like the giant place makes no sense. That one is very
Yeah, the
obviously
monsters are
not.
just like I think they
Yeah,
probably ran out of time and
I think
didn't.
they ran out of time. Like
Yeah,
they straight
and,
up
and they didn't
ran
know
out of
what to
time.
put there. So like we'll put the
Yeah,
big dogs from Caelid, we'll put the crows from Caelid, but we're not going to recolor them for the snow. We'll just leave them there. And
yeah.
we'll put the big giant
And the
guys.
hands,
And then the
and the
hands, they're just
hands.
all over the place, but we're not going to recolor them for anything. I think that, yeah, everything where the snow, there was basically no snow specific monsters there, no unique types, except for the
Yeah,
one dragon. And it was definitely disappointing. The second I saw demi humans with, they didn't even have like extra clothes. They didn't even have extra clothes. There's these monkey guys. They were on the beach. It was hot on the
They're
beach.
probably very, very cold.
They're now very cold. How are they going to fight me? I was like, I almost immediately got like kind of mad at that.
Yeah, like I like that's the like the reality is making a video game is very, very tough, and I understand that like for like this is how games are made. You put the most effort into the beginning, and then it tapers off towards the end.
100%. He's just racing towards the
And
finish line against the deadline.
yeah, they're just trying to get it done. And this the thing is, this game is so ambitious and it's so honest about what it is. Like this isn't a game where I had to spend $20 to buy the giant snowfield.
Yeah.
Like this isn't a game like, and monetization is a huge part of enjoyment. Like, you know, like how you enjoy something is entirely dependent on like what you did to acquire it in real life, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And like the fact that this is a complete standalone experience that I was enjoying means I'm so much more likely to be like, oh, this area's got kind of reused stuff in it. And then I'm like, okay. And like no problem. Like I get it. I'm not here to harsh anyone's like time. It seems like they put some effort in and then this part just didn't really make it, and that's fair, you know? Like
So I totally disagree. I am more than willing to give the benefit of the doubt to developers when they have to reuse content or assets. But there's actually a game company out there that doesn't have to do that, which they almost always have like, even if they reuse assets, they usually use different colors or different things to differentiate them. And this game company is called FromSoft. They made games where they didn't have to reuse stuff the entire time. However, they do have to do it in this open world experience because when you're designing open world, they didn't have content, so they just repeated the same stuff. And that's as a self-certified open world hater. I got my certification somewhere around here. I think I have the plaque in my bedroom.
yeah, they sent you a certificate in the mail.
Yeah, because I don't like open world games. I feel like one of the downsides of making the Dark Souls franchise or like taking this direction is not that I think that all open world games are bad all of the time. That's not true. Just most of them are bad most of the time. The problem is that they had the right amount of content for the scale of the game when it was just like a 25 to 30 hour experience. But when they stretch it out to the longer one, they had no choice because they wanted to make a bigger, longer game than to reuse assets, which I'm not upset with. But when they make the choice to make a bigger, longer game, being game designers that are successful at actually having new assets and new content all over their video game previously, I personally noticed, and I was like, I don't want to fight the same monsters like over and over and over and over. One of the most egregious examples of which for me was, I don't even remember the names of those guys, but you know those like in the sewers, there's like those big guys that have like the giant
Those are
two-handed
Omen.
swords. What are they called?
Omen.
Omen?
Omen.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So when you're going to the Divine Tower after you beat
Oh, you're talking about the boss fight where
Margit.
they send you to the Shadow Realm?
They say you Shadow Realm, you have to fight two of them at the same time. I literally dropped my controller. I'm like, what lazy nonsense? Where I have to fight two of them in the dark for no reason. One of them didn't even aggro, and I've already
Oh, yeah,
fought
me
these
too.
monsters. I was like, why is this even here? Just let me walk across the bridge or do nothing. Either of those options would have been fine. And so I totally get why people like the open world style, but because they clearly didn't have, whether it was a time constraint, I'm sure they wanted to put unique monsters everywhere. That was definitely the plan. They didn't want to do that, but that was like some guys like, okay, we got 30 minutes. We got to package the game. And it's like, oh man, there's not enough. That stuff gets me.
Less is more when it comes to game design. Like if you're thinking to yourself, we have no choice but to do something that's bad, instead do nothing at all. And I don't mean don't make a game. Like I'm not saying that they shouldn't have made Elden Ring. I'm saying that if they think to themselves, we don't have any unique monsters to populate a zone-sized giant snowfield, well, they should probably have consolidated the two snow areas that they did have and figured something out from there. And that way, rather than having both snow areas be weird and have not enemies in them, you only have one that's weird and has no enemies in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, there's like, if you're thinking to yourself, oh, we can't make this boss fight good, we're just gonna have to reuse some stuff, we'll put two omens in a thing, then do not do that.
Yep.
Like you have like, and Elden Ring is certainly good enough that if they had cut all of the stuff that is bad, there would be enough game.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely enough game there for them to have achieved the same level of success.
And that's the thing for me is like, it's not saying that the game is bad in any capacity. It's not. It's a fantastic, amazing product that still blows me
Yeah.
away. It's like they did not have to do that. They could have just like either not added some monsters to certain places or like scaled back the ambition. But, obviously game design happens like anything else. Things don't happen as you plan them as they go. World builders done with this large area and they built it, but monster designers aren't done making new monster types, but they already have
Yeah,
the world.
and
So they're not going to cut like a fully designed area. They
it's
just
also
cut the
it's like
monster design.
it's like I imagine that taking out that area and restructuring it is probably more work than just leaving it as is.
And
You
you're
know what I mean?
just putting some monsters in. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and you got to work with what you got. Like, Elden Rings is I don't it's like it's not its own engine. I don't believe like this is something they already had, right?
I have no clue.
Like this is like their from soft proprietary thing they've
I'm
been
sure this
working
is their own
on.
proprietary engine, yeah.
Yeah, like this isn't like they didn't like spend $20 on a copy of an Unreal tutorial and
No, no, no. I mean,
figure this out.
yeah.
So it's like they're not starting from zero here, and I have to assume that maybe they just misunderstood scope. Maybe something changed about like how players are meant to navigate the world, and then they were like, oh geez, we gotta figure something out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we could speculate endlessly on like what happened with the snow areas, like because what did happen with the snow areas, like what's going on over there, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like what they definitely could do at some point in the future is like I'm just skipping to some better B-roll. The next game that they make, I'm certain that FromSoft's next video game is going to be like especially if they do another open world like this, they will have learned from these mistakes and figured a lot of that stuff and fixed a lot of those things. Because that's the
Yeah,
type of game company that they seem to be.
that's part of why Elden Ring is so good is because they like I'm not going to say that they listened because the majority of the fan base of Dark Souls is incomprehensible and insufferable, but like they understood how players interacted with the game. Like
Yeah.
the inclusion of boss specific respawn points so you don't have to do a big long run to get back. Like if I had to go through a big complicated jumpy puzzle and then fight some monsters before I went back and fought Radahn, I would not have been able to learn Radahn's move set in the same way.
So
Like
do
it was
not play Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3 or Demon Souls.
yeah, like
Those games do that every time. Holy
yeah, and
moly.
it's just good. Well, that's a good like I'm trying not to like dunk on the fan base here, but like FromSoft has such a reputation for making good games. People really like their stuff, and people who are fans of these games, they really, really, obviously if you're fans of something, you love it, And so for years, it was like, hey, I don't like the idea that you have to do some light improvisational theater and a series of progressive gymnastic routines in order to get back to a boss. And like, nah, it's part of the Dark Souls experience. And they simply removed that mechanic from the video game, and everyone's like, oh, From Software are geniuses. Like,
Yeah.
like that was good. It was objectively a good thing that they did. I'm glad they got rid of them. You know what I
I
mean?
make this comparison all the time that like the fun part of the landscape is exploring the landscape, right? So going to 3 see
Yeah,
something the first time, that's the best. The fun part about fighting a boss is fighting the boss and learning its mechanics and learning its moveset and getting to the point where you can tackle this larger problem, right?
yeah,
And a game that I praise as having an amazing respawn mechanic is Super Meat Boy, because when you die, you instantly get to play again. There's no waiting. It's
yes,
just do the level right away. And so if you want to take a
yes.
break, you can actually physically stop. Even a game that I played that was similar to the Souls franchise, Code Vein, which is worse in so many ways, at least almost every single time for bosses, they just put one of the little bonfires right next to the boss door. So at
Yeah.
least if you fight the boss, you just get to start again. And so this game doing that was very, very satisfying. It
Except
worked
for
out really well.
the one that's broken, which is not my favorite
Wait, which
place.
one's broken?
There's one. It's next to the Erd tree in Caelid,
Oh,
and you have to
okay.
fight two of the cats at the same time. Like the big cat robots. By the way, those things look freaky. I don't like them.
Big cat robots? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
bad
about.
face.
You mean the
Bad face on
watchdogs?
that. Yes,
They're dogs. They're not cats. Maybe that's your
that is
problem.
that is an evil cat. I don't care what they say. I don't care what they call them.
Yeah.
Um, But no, it's just like it's stuff like that that's really good. Like things when you pick them up, they automatically go to your stash and automatically regenerate. So they can have it both ways. They can make it so that you can pick up an infinite number of thingy-majigs, which feels good, and that way you can clear them off the map. But they can also limit you to like 10 knives per fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
That's great.
if you're playing, you can pick up more, or you can rest and get more out of your bank.
Yeah. And the fact that you don't have to do that, like you don't have to press restock,
it just automatically does it
automatically.
Yes.
And you can turn that off if you're just tired of seeing them. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things they did here that are an obvious improvement over the typical open world game. Like not having an animation to pick something up. You don't have to worry about inventory filling up while you pick stuff up, like gear and stuff like that.
Oh, I
know
hate
that's a lot
games that give
coming
me an
from-
inventory limit. I hate that
Yeah,
because
I was gonna say it's a lot coming from you as a DDO dev, but
well,
like
MMOs are different in terms of how much space that you hold on to because the items are saved in like FromSoft. There's a limit on how many items they have because they're not developing the game anymore. Like they're going to make DLC, but they're done with the
yeah,
game. So there's how many items you can have. And also it's saved locally on your save file or that gets backed up onto Steam. So they don't need to care about the space. Like they need to care, but as long as it's not hampering game performance, it's not that big of a deal. But for an MMO or an Oli's online service, these things are constantly going back and forth between a particular server, and all the item information is going back and forth between a particular server, and all that other stuff. I can see why
yeah.
MMO games have difficulty with item space.
Not to get too into the weeds of this, but from a purely technical perspective, where DDO has performance problems right now, one of the bottlenecks we're looking at is pulling things from the repository. The repository here refers to like our serialized database. Like this is where we keep your save data and all the save data together in like one big data center. If you were to call it something, we'd call it that.
Yeah.
And so like for example, having less things on your character makes your login times faster and your loading screens faster because your character is less heavy and therefore takes less time to place into the world. And this game, whether or not you have an item, matters very little to the size of your save file. Like there's not a lot of things change based on your save file. Like whenever you load the game, the monsters are going to be in the exact same place, and like they don't even like you know what I mean. Like they reset areas all the time.
Yep.
And now some places that changes. Like if you kill a boss, the world is slightly different. But like you're saving like literally 4 bits total.
Yep.
For like what is it, 32 booleans? There you go. That's 32 bosses worth of save data right there. That's 4 megabytes. Or I'm sorry, it's 4 just bits. You can do that 1,000 times and you get to a JPEG in terms of size. Like single player games have this huge advantage because it's like you can make so many assumptions about like the player in the world. And so like yeah, building a seamless inventory system where you have everything that you want on demand within some constraints of how the game is like put together. Like they don't want you to have unlimited flasks, but they want your flasks to regenerate automatically. So it's like they just did it really smart. Like
yeah,
I didn't find myself fighting with like menuing in that way, which was nice.
Yeah, the itemization or the menuing of this game was done very, very well. I actually have no complaints about the menuing. Actually, that's not true. The only issue I have with menuing is there are too many things sometimes, and I wish I could sort things a little bit better in terms of how they end up sorting it. Like there's so many weapons, there's so many consumables, there's so many crafting things. I barely engaged with the crafting system, and I tried to use the crafting system, but there's so many things, and there's like 4 different kinds of, there's like Aeonian butterflies, but then there's the Aeonian fluttering butterfly, and then there's the Aeonian, and I was like, I don't even have the energy for this.
I never crafted a single cracked pot item. I don't know what they do. Like the perfumer stuff. I know I've died to perfumers any number of times.
I died to perfumers so often. They're so irritating.
Yeah, like there's one in the Albinaurica village underneath this star place.
Yep.
And you spawn and you gotta fight that dude. And I finally kill that dude, and then there's a guy with 2 machetes that just beat my butt and like
the omen killers.
Yeah, and then I had to go back and fight the perfumer again, and like it was a real struggle.
Yeah,
but,
and then there's that entire swamp. There's the entire swamp full of perfumers. Did you ever do the swamp castle? Yeah, you did because you got the arm.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, because Elden Ring, you do the whole game out of order regardless of what you do. So I find the arm, and then I'm like, was I supposed to give this to Millicent? Too bad I already finished her quest. wrong. Her quest is just very long.
Just
and you
just
dropped it."
beginning. Did you do the
Yeah.
entire quest? Like, did you go and get her needle and then you stab it into?
No, because I saw that I had to kill those tree spirits in the stupid rot, and I literally did a U-turn and I like left. I was like, I'm actually not
You
going
have
to
to
do
kill
this.
the tree spirit in the rot. It is
Yeah.
It's terrible. And so the worst part for me is because I tried to look up nothing when I played this game because I was like,
Yeah,
I don't want to see it. I'm going to look it up on my second playthrough.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
so after you kill it, which took me quite a few tries, once you kill it, you then have to pay attention and notice that Millicent has a summon sign on one of the hills, and it's the tallest hill. So unless you're on that hill, you don't see it. So you'd have to know to explore to go over there. But it's also on the opposite side of the arena
God.
from where you need to go. So if you didn't notice it, so I killed the boss on the hill, and I stood there looking around being like, you can only see it if you're standing right here. Like if you fought it anywhere else in this arena, you wouldn't even notice this sign and you wouldn't do her quest. I
spent
mad.
several hours looking for the catacomb you just found, by the way.
Oh, really?
Like, this is the one that one of the ladies is pointing to.
Yeah.
By the way, why do the ladies look so messed up? What's up with that?
Oh,
The
that
statues with the
person?
pointing? The statues that point. Why are they so creepy looking? Why would somebody make a statue that does that and looks so like that? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, because that statue is a person who is designed, I can't remember their name, but their goal is to help guide those who are in death back to the Erd Tree.
Well, they creep me out statue-wise.
Oh, absolutely.
And there were two I never actually found. There was one that's pointing up towards Volcano Manor that I never found, and there was this one that's pointing across the snowfield area. I never found it, but I guess you just showed me.
Yeah, so now you can find it.
Now I can find it. I've already started my New Game Plus though, so it's gonna be a long time.
You'll get it.
Yeah,
But
I don't
so
know.
wait, you
For
never
me-
finished the Millicent storyline?
No, I simply gave up.
Okay, so can I spoil it?
So believe it or not, I gave up, but I actually watched someone play it. Who's actually sitting behind me. Literally before he left for his work shifts today. So 7 hours ago, I watched the end of it.
Because so you have to protect Millicent while she's getting attacked by 4 dudes all at the same time, or four women because it's the sisters. Which I was like, okay, this is tough because it's basically Coil Lavelle all over again. Where I'm like, Coil, stop dying, dodge.
Yeah,
But anyway,
duck, dive, dodge. Like, get out of there.
So I beat it, and then after finishing that, you talk to Millicent. She dies.
Yeah, she kills herself.
I was like, she's like, oh, I don't want to be part of this thing. I'm like, so go somewhere else. Get out of this place. Go open a bakery. I don't know. Do you have to die right now? And she's like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, there's so many other options. You have immunity to the rot. Just walk away.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go kill Millennia. Just walk away. Oh man, and that's because when I remember you were talking about it because I just finished that section, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna help Millicent. That seems to be going good, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah. There's just there's a lot to. The characters in here are very weird. It's just very, very weird people that give up at the drop of a hat. When the going gets tough, give up is really kind of their.
So that does happen. This dungeon, by the way, that I'm in, this is probably the best and worst catacomb. I can't recommend it enough. It's so horrible and also so good. It's gonna take a million years to get through.
Is it as good as the one that makes you do the Legend of Zelda chest trap thing?
Yes, it's way better.
That one actually. That's the thing is that's right there. That's good game design. Because I got fooled. They built 3 identical layouts they were teleporting between. And that's why it was so confusing, because I was like, I am wise to your games. I know what's going on. I've played The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, and therefore am really smart. I know what I'm doing. And then 10 minutes in, I'm like, wow, how did I get lost in a straight line? Like, actually, where am I? I'm at where the lever is. The lever is gone. Like, it's 17 question marks in a row.
Yep.
Like, they fooled me. Like, tats off FromSoft really got me good. Like,
but I don't know, in terms of like the actual storytelling, so I don't generally have an issue with the fact that the world is depressing and the people are apathetic. It makes sense to when you think about a lot of their stories. So the Tarnished are immortal, So they've just spent like such an incredibly long time doing stuff, but they also realize they're going up and up in an uphill battle where a lot of them, they don't ever have to return to the lands between. So the ones that do come to the lands between have been there for a while trying to figure out what the heck they're supposed to do, because most of the Tarnish aren't there, right? They're somewhere else. And when they come back to the lands between thinking they're going to reclaim the title as Elden Lord, they realize, oh, there's demigods that they can't do anything about. And that's why half of the Tarnish you find are like, and they also don't see the grace. So they're like, oh, I'll just do whatever, I guess, and just chill. And they just kind of do their own thing, which makes sense. It's very like, there's 1,000 people and only one of them can succeed. And most of the people are told like right away, the fact that they can't sense the grace, that they're not gonna instantly.
Yeah, like it's very interesting. Like this is a game that's like very like color, like gold versus silver is very important to its symbolism. I think that's really where their storytelling shines. Is it's less about like the beats of the narrative and like the symbolism and recognizing that they put together a cohesive a world that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I feel like the atmospheric storytelling of a lot of these different areas means a lot more in this one than some of the other FromSoft games. But that's mostly because you can play for hours and hours without talking to a single NPC.
Yeah,
it takes what's going on.
Like a world like this is meant to make you feel lonely. Like the fact that all of the NPCs you talk to are like obviously distrustful and evil. Like it's like just you're like talk to somebody and they're like, would you like to do me a favor? And you're like, no, like you sound like a murderer. Like you're the favor you're gonna ask me is, can you put your hand in this blender and then you're gonna turn the blender on? Like I'm not falling for your games.
Yep.
But that's like the only person you meet in like 3 hours of wandering around this world. And you're like, yeah, Blender guy may have some anger issues, but I'm sure he's nice.
Yeah, so then you just put your hand in the blender because you're like, well, I'm here at least. There were more than one occasion. Yeah, because I was like, I'm already here. I might as well figure out how the story ends with this blender.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
That's kind of what's weird about it is like, so like I'm talking to Gowry for the first time, who's the guy that wants to get the needle for Millicent, right?
Yeah.
And Gowry's like, it's really important you give this needle to this lady for non-nefarious reasons. I promise they're non-nefarious.
Yeah.
And you're like, literally in my head, I'm like, this guy is like so
he's so evil. Yeah, instantly. Yeah, he's like the most evil guy ever.
This is the most evil guy I've ever seen in my entire life. But I think is at the end of the day, his motivations seem to be genuine because like that helped her out and it helped everybody out. Help Melania out, like
yeah, and you think everything is going to be kind of cool, but then you talk to him more, and he's like, "Yes, we're going to spread the rot everywhere. The rot is the best thing ever, which is currently destroying the world." And you're like, "Oh no, you're a bad guy."
Talk to Morn, like of Castle Morn.
What? No, I'm talking about Gowry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said talk to. My bad.
No, you talk to him more.
Oh,
you talk to him more afterwards, and he talks about how he wants Millicent to grow into this bud and flower, and makes all these weird references. But then he keeps talking about how she's gonna turn this thing and become the new Queen of Rot. And I was like, you're a bad guy. I did a bad thing. Oh, I'm so sorry, Millicent. I thought because I can cure the rot. I got them boluses. I could fix that. No problem. Come over here. And so I ended up murdering Gowry, which was a good choice.
Well, that makes sense. Like I there's a lot of NPCs in this game where you're like, I bet you've got a pretty interesting quest line. I will read about it on the wiki as you like hit them with a big stick. I'll get back to you, And like I feel like that's kind of the conjecture of this game is that it's a harsh world where your choices have consequences and are permanent.
Yep.
If you kill an NPC, that's like that forever. You know what I mean?
Until you use the potion that brings it back.
Yeah, but like in some cases, like the choice, like there's it's trying to make a world in which like you might not know the consequences of your actions until you're done and you've really soaked in the ramifications. But it's also a game that goes, hey man, no problem. This game is built around replayability, and that's why it's important that you can just try again.
Exactly, I agree. I don't think you need to have to do everything in your first playthrough of one of these style of games, because they do a good job of incentivizing you to say, if only I did things slightly different, and kind of go through a playthrough. But it's not as binary. I think one of the reasons I like the way that this game does it is that you play like Mass Effect or Dragon Age or whatever, and they'll literally give you like BioWare's just like, oh, here's the good versus evil scale.
Yeah, the color coded.
Yeah, and it's like, do you want to do the good thing or do you want to do the terrible thing? Whereas in this game, they go, your actions have consequences. Do whatever you want, and see what happens. Like, did you do the B-roll footage? Has got the jellyfish quest. Did you reunite the jellyfish?
I had to look that up because I walked in and I was like, ooh, jellyfish, and I hit it with a sword. And then I was like, huh, it's kind of weird that I can't open this.
Wait, you hit the jellyfish?
Oh, I killed her.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so literally every single time I've done, like, when I was playing this game, one of the first things you get from what's her name, the spirit tuner lady. Anyway, she gives you the jellyfish to look after when you talk to her, right? And she's like, oh, look after this little one. And I was like, oh, the jellyfish are friendly because she gives you the ashes. And so then I never for the entire game attacked any jellyfish. Because I was like, the jellyfish are friendly and nice, and they never attack you. Except for there's a couple that are there, there's red ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the blue ones don't attack you. So I just never fought them.
See, you're a better person. Because I looked at that and I had like the comical dollar signs in my eyes, and I was like, money.
Yeah, you're like, but they drop runes though.
Runes. That's it. No, the like, I think the part of the strength of this game is its replayability, and they went out of their way to make individual playstyles feel different. So like they're trying to say like, hey, you found this really cool like katana you can't use. Why don't you just start a new game and give it a try? You know what I mean? And you can go basically anywhere in the entire video game from the outset. So, like, you find a cool katana, almost.
I had this thing where I was like, oh, I'm going to make a bow character, but the lightning stat scales off of dexterity. So if you make a bow character, which is a dex item, and then you use an Ash of War on it to give it a imbue, so then now it has the lightning on it, so it has better dex scaling and it does lightning damage. Let's do that. So I had to figure out how to get to the point where I could do this. There's a couple problems. First problem is that the lightning imbue is inside of the original Roundtable Hold, which is, of course, inside Lanedell. And to get into Lanedell, you have to get all the way to Lanedell, so you have to somehow get up the lift of Dectus, or you have to climb the other place, or you have to get teleported to Volcano Manor and then work backwards from there and somehow escape Volcano Manor, which means you have to fight these sentinels. But if let's say you did that, then to get into Lanedell, you have to fight a tree sentinel, which is the lightning
you
ones.
Also have to have 2 great runes before you're allowed in, too.
So you need 2 great runes. So you have all these problems trying to figure out how to get into the city. And then you get in there, then you get this thing, and then you can craft it onto your bow. So I was like, but I'm going to do it. I'm determined. I'm going to make a bow character. I'm going to get there. And you know what? It takes hours of work. Playing a bow character is not a great idea. It's a good supplementary weapon, but it's not a good primary weapon because you run out of arrows. This is such a problem. But here's the thing that I learned, which is really important. Bows, when you use Ashes of War on them, don't take affinities, and you can't make a lightning bow.
Oh my god. No.
There's no affinity on it. So you can...
After your story, I thought there would be some happy ending.
There are no happy endings in Elden Ring, okay? So I figured this out because I was like, oh, maybe I got the basic wet blade that lets you put like the... I was like, oh, I'll get extra dex scaling on my bow at least. I'll make it quality or whatever it is, or keen. And so I go to put on the thing on the bow, and it's like, what? I can't choose one? And then I immediately Google it, and it's like, oh, you can't put affinities on bows. I was like, why? Elden Ring, can't I put affinities on my bow? Madness.
I don't know. I like the same reason you can't put Ashes of War on everything. Can we talk about Boat Guy? Summon Skeletons?
Yeah, sure. Those are fun. The first one was fun. The rest of them were annoying.
I thought they were great. I really liked the Boat Guy's style.
I like that he killed all his own guys.
I'm watching your B-roll of you fighting those skeletons. Actually what happened to me is I showed up here and I was like, I'm gonna kill this guy. And I killed a skeleton, and it turns out they instantly respawn. And there are a lot of them. It doesn't actually do anything. You gotta find Boat Guy.
Yeah. Well, you fought the first Boat Guy, right?
I fought all 3 Boat Guys.
Yeah.
I think there are 4, actually.
I actually didn't get all the route for the quest. I never finished up getting all the death route.
I did not. I can't believe that was Malacath the whole time. Spoiler alert.
It's not Malacath. Different guy.
Different guy?
Those are different guys.
What are the odds there are two Beastmen cleric? Come on. They're the
So
same guy.
they're different clergymen, and you can tell because he doesn't have the same bracelet that Malacath has.
But Malacath's bracelet was underneath the cloth. He had to pull it back in order to reveal it.
Nah, different guy.
What?
Geraint is not Malacath.
Well, color me fooled.
Isn't that confusing?
Yeah, like that's I would say is an area in which reuse of a model is directly causing problems because I was convinced they were the same person.
But yeah, because they just give you the same model.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a problem, and there's a lot of stuff like that.
I like watching you do this because you're really close to a painting spot, and I don't think you know it.
I did none of the paintings. I did 0.
I got a big hat from the place you're really close to. It's called a big hood. It's a really big hood. It's just a huge hood. I cannot state this enough. It's large.
I never did that. I never did the big hood, or I did none of the paintings. And the main reason I did none of them is because I didn't know what you would get for doing any of them. And so I just deemed it wasn't worth it. I was like, oh, it's probably just some souls or something silly. I don't know. So I just never did any of them, and I left.
I got a bow that's a harp that makes musical notes.
A harp that makes musical notes?
Yeah, it makes twanging noises when you fire it. It's the harp bow.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, I completely forgot about this boss. Oh man, I hate this boss. I think I lose to this right now. There are some bosses that I found and areas that I didn't like. I think I actually liked pretty much every area in the game. I'm trying to think if there are any areas that I didn't like. I found the world design was just spot on. Even like the Lake of Rot, which is kind of irritating, was fine. The giant area was fine.
They were really building up to it because it's like that's how this game does difficulty. It's like you fight a soldier and you're like, yeah, no problem, and then it's like now you got to fight like 20 soldiers. I'm sorry, I'm gonna sneeze.
I think the only area I didn't like was the blood place. I actually don't even remember how to get there. But you know what I'm talking about?
Mog's Dynasty?
Yeah. That's the exact one. Yeah. That was the only area. Oh, that and the Blizzard areas. Why did FromSoft think it was a good idea to make it so you can't see anything in the Blizzard areas? Terrible idea. Bad game design. Don't turn off my vision.
I had no problems with that whatsoever. I went there and I was like, ooh, follow the thing, no problem. And I just followed the thing, no problem, and it got me there.
No, it's because I wanted to explore and find secrets and stuff in the dark Blizzard, and you just can't see anywhere to go. So what I ended up doing is, as a joke, while I was riding around, I got literally just a white screen and put it over top. And I was like, here we go, guys. It's the same thing. Look how I'm an entertaining live streamer. Just look at it. Just look at it. It was terrible. Wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, I honestly I didn't mind it at all. It was actually there's a puzzle place in that snowfield, and it's one of the only times in that game where I feel like I got a puzzle really well all by myself.
Oh, is that the tower where you had to charm the guy or whatever?
Yeah, I immediately got it. I was looking at this, I was like, oh, I bet you gotta charm him. And I had a bewitching branch on me, and I totally did it, and it totally opened, and I was like, yeah.
I was looking at it, I was like, how do I get them to fight? And I was like, oh wait, maybe I can get like the ash, but I didn't have the ash for it, so I couldn't summon them. And I was like, too hard, and then I left.
I mean, that's the thing is like
I came back and did it, but after Googling it, let's use the branch.
I think it's like that's such a good conjecture though. It's like this game, it doesn't want you to do everything because then you'd kind of run out of content. You know what I mean? It wants to make you a world where you can feel okay with leaving things that you don't want to do because there's enough stuff in it. It doesn't feel like anxious. You know what I mean? Like it's not like the game isn't worried that you're like, oh man, if you don't fight that death bird, you won't see the good work we did on the death bird. And it's like, hey man, fight the death bird or don't. I don't care. Like death bird's kind of bullshit anyway. Like
the death bird is totally bullshit. I hate this boss. I agree. And I actually find it really funny the number of things that I did differently than I think, like just in my playthrough and the experiences that I had thinking back on it. Like you talked about how it's like, oh, you don't have to do the puzzle, right? You don't have to solve it. You can like walk away or you can come up with some other type of solution. That's probably my favorite part of the game is that there's so many scenarios where you're just like, either I will come back to this later or I won't, but I still have fun and I enjoy the game and maybe I'll pick it up on the next time through. I kind of wish there was a few more options to some of the different types of storytelling or like areas that they designed. I feel like there were too many puzzles in this game that only had like one solution for the size of the video game, or felt like they only had one solution. Maybe I'm an idiot, but there were a lot of times where I was playing and I was like, I feel like there's only one way to solve this problem, and I don't know, what I was doing wrong.
Yeah, like there are definitely some things that I didn't really enjoy puzzle wise, like finding big turtles, finding little turtles, any
The
turtles at
invisible
all.
turtles. Oh man, and the big turtles. Oh god, I
Yeah.
ran into problems with the big turtles because there was one of them that was in the air that I hit when I first went up, but I didn't see myself hit it, so I didn't realize I hit it. It was like this thing where you
Mm.
had to jump off of a lift and then hit the turtle as you're going up, but I didn't see myself do that because I wasn't paying enough attention. So I thought that was the turtle that I was missing, and I spent like 20 minutes just jumping up and down trying to hit a turtle that I thought was invisible.
I
Oh,
straight up left that. I was like, I'll come back and play through too.
yeah.
It's one of the achievements that I need because it's a legendary sorcery. But I also accidentally messed up Selen's quest, so I can't get the Azure sorcery either. So I was like, I'll come back. Like I've got to do a sorcery playthrough at some point.
Oh, Selen's quest. I was so sad. I was so excited to like help Selen do all this other stuff. And I finished the quest line. I got her all to the Rhea Lucaria. She's the headmaster. And then my favorite part is I helped Selen do all this stuff. And then you encounter the witch hunter. And he's like, yes, the witch is here. It's like the body is dead, but I feel like they've escaped somehow. And I already know I moved Selen into a new body. And he's like, yes, and it'd be terrible because she's one of the most evil witches who's killed more people than anyone who's ever existed. And I'm like,
If I remember correctly, that wasn't even Selen. That was like a fake Selen. That the
Well, that
Dolly Botherer.
yeah, well, it was her real body.
Mm-hmm.
But you had to take her soul out and put into a new copy of her body.
There's
And
a lot
so
of Selens floating around.
yeah, but I was like, are you sure? He's like, yes, she's terrible. She's killed everybody. She has to be stopped. I was like, are you sure? So then when it came to the end bit, Selen, you have the option to either help Selen fight or the witch hunter. And I was like, well, I went this far, so I help her fight and win. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, she moves the queen. She gets rid of the queen because she doesn't like the carrion queen. She displaces her, and she's like, I'm the new leader of the academy. And she's like, but I know you obviously can't stay with me because you have to go become Elden Lord. She's like, but go become Elden Lord. And then she goes, also, if becoming Elden Lord doesn't work out, there's always a spot for you at the academy. And I was like, that is a very
That's
comforting
great.
thing. That's really nice because Selen just doesn't seem like an awful murderer. She is apparently, but she doesn't seem like an awful murderer. And
I
she's
don't
always
believe
nice to you the whole game.
I don't believe that she's an awful
Yeah,
murderer.
she's nice to you
I
the
think
whole
she was
game.
framed.
Even
I
at
think
the
she was
end,
framed.
I was like, oh, this seems nice. And then you reload the area and you come back and she's one of those face balls.
What she is?
Yeah, because she experiments with the primordial magic or whatever. That's her entire quest line. And by experimenting it kills her and turns into her face ball.
No.
I know. And I was like, one happy ending, please. Just somebody needs to not die or turn into a monster. I was so
That's
upsetty spaghetti.
awful.
I hope
I
somebody makes a mod where like you can save Selen, where she just stands there and just she doesn't have to say anything because she's like, "Come back after you become Elden Lord. We have lots to discuss." And I was like, "I'll become Elden Lord and we'll hang out. We'll like
That's like that
rebuild the
reminds me of
academy."
have you played Oblivion?
Yeah,
So there's like very popular mods. It's like rather than killing the Dark Brotherhood, you just talk to them and say, "Hey, can you get out of town for a few weeks? I gotta fake your death." And they're like, "Yeah, sure, no problem, bro." And they do it, and they just come back
that's
after the quest
awesome.
is done. And it's
Uh,
like that's great. Like I like a lot of these quests. Like when you're being like, "Hey, you've got to betray your friend and kill them." Like the idea that as a real human being, you wouldn't walk up and tell them that you're like, "Hey, I've gotta kill you for some reason. Can you go on vacation and fake your death for 20 minutes so I can finish this thing for this guy and then you come back, no problem?"
yep.
And people would be like, "Yeah, sure, no problem, buddy." Like that's awful.
Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to. I mean, I had to talk about it. There's too many things that happen where I'm just like, this thing, like the quest lines. Every quest line is so sad. Every time,
Yeah,
dude.
it's just such an easy game to gush about. Like
Yeah.
there's so many things that are happening in it, and it feels like every single time that I was playing, that my first playthrough, I was seeing something that I had never seen in a game before. Um, and like I really liked it. I really liked this game. I
So,
think I
well,
just a lot of fun.
so I have a question for you. As somebody who video game makes, and so
Mm,
you played this game after you make a video game. What are some
yeah.
things either you've learned or that you're like, this is cool. I wish I could do this thing, or you might think differently about the way you make game.
A lot of the stuff that I think I'm taking to heart here is that like um like I don't think any of this is new to game design as a whole, but it's just another great it's a perfect example of it, which is that players do not like spending time fiddling with like their inventories and stuff. That this game is so light on the menuing
It's
and
so light on the
spends
menuing.
yeah, like cuz it wants you in the game. It wants you doing stuff action-wise. And like that's something that's hard for us to do as an MMO because like menuing is the game. Like
Yeah,
that's
MMOs are literally based on the UI. That's the whole thing.
yeah, and so it's difficult for like DDO is not going to be able to pivot to something that's like a a soft touch narrative focused action RPG, with like that sort of thing. But one thing that we can do that isn't menuing related is this game has a really strong relationship between enemy types, like enemy silhouetting,
Hmm.
and their abilities. Like when you see, for example, if I'm looking at the screen right now, you see like the lion with a sword on its wrist,
Yep.
all of them kind of almost work exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so you learn one, and then you see an enemy later, and you're like, "Oh, I see this guy before I know what it does." This is something that we should do way more of in DDO because we have really good monsters. We have a gigantic library of expertly made, really well done monsters that animate really well, and they're true to the lore. And it's like it's really good. We have hundreds of monsters, unique types.
Right.
And we should spend the time and go through and see if we can just make unique behaviors for them by monster type. So like you see a hobgoblin, you know they've got like a funky backstab, you know what I mean, that they're gonna try to get you with. And like that's something we can do kind of piecemeal, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
when a designer has a good idea, we go like new rule, lions, all of them they have this behavior where they roar and they buff other people nearby. So you gotta watch out for that. And spending the time and making it so that enemy types, like their actual, like, a goblin versus a crab, all do kind of one unique thing or multiple unique things,
Yeah.
means that players kind of learn this behavior in the same way they learn enemies in this in an Elden Ring or in
Yep.
Dark Souls, and it makes players feel good, and it would help break up some of our fights. Like that's something that's like, there's a little bit of enemy reuse in this game that's I would say we're definitely worth mentioning. But
Yep.
what they do really well is even in areas where it would be really obvious for only one type of enemy to be, they find good reasons to break up the combat with other types of enemies, so you're constantly switching your strategy. And like we do that as well. Like we try not to have it done as all one enemy type because it gets really monotonous. And that's where adding new unique behaviors would really help because it's like you got to use your brain. You got to think of this stuff. You got to think about how enemies would work together.
Yeah.
And I think it would
Exactly.
be fun for content as well. Like
I agree.
I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna have like big slugs, but
Well, so the fort that I'm actually in right now on the B-roll is a perfect example of like where I appreciate that they do things in a different way, so the enemies are rated in a different way, but they're
mhm,
still the same enemies. Like you're fighting the exiles, which are literally the bad guys from the first castle that you go into, with no
yeah.
differences or changes. They do have the same attacks, they have the same patterns, they even have the same clothes, even though
Well, they're
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 different place.
ghosts.
But they're
Yeah,
ghosts, so they have a glowy gold to them, and sometimes they teleport around you, which you might not be expecting.
yeah.
And
It's like one new behavior. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it really
I
changes the
died
whole
to
thing
this.
up.
I died to this ballista probably a dozen times.
It was a hard bridge to get across. Yeah.
That's a hard bridge to get across. Also, I don't know how you did the Caelid approach, by the way. When you got to Redmane Castle,
Yeah.
in like Caelid,
Yeah.
were you able to just teleport across, or did you have to like go the long way?
So I didn't have to go across the bridge because I climbed Fort Gale, which has the
Hmm.
teleporter that brings you to Redmane, and I was looking for a place to rest because I was like, okay, there's got to be like maybe at the top there's like one of the graces or something, and I had like 2 flasks left, like 2 heal and 1 mana flask, and
Mm.
then it teleported me to the base. And Redmane Castle has no, as far as I can tell, graces in it until the very end or the one on the other side of the bridge. So then from that point, I cleared the entirety of Redmane all the way through with just those tiny resources very carefully. That's how I did it, all in one sitting with almost nothing when I was looking for the heal spot.
Yeah, like I think that the how I approached it, which was running through Caelid and then across the bridge, that is I think in my own experience, that was the longest stretch between races. It was several very difficult respawning fights. Like getting across the bridge with the two trebuchets is already a struggle. Like you actually had to carefully mount and dismount in order to abuse the iframes. In order because these things like they slightly home and the explosions
Yeah.
are big enough you can't dodge out of them. So it was already a huge struggle getting there. And then you juke the giant and you go all the way around, you juke the harpy, and then you get into the actual castle, and then it's a huge struggle just trying to get to the exactly one grace that's in there. It was it's a gigantic amount of space to cover
Yeah.
just to get to the boss.
The upside is you can kind of just blitz it to the grace if you know where it is. So in a subsequent
Yeah.
playthrough, you can get in and find the grace. I cleared everything. I killed every monster in one sitting. And then I got to the grace with nothing left, and I was like, oh, I felt so excited. I finally made it.
Yeah, I mean that's the really good part of games like this is that they make you work for it. And so like when you accomplish something, you feel really 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 good. Like you that was a difficult thing to do, and if you had messed up, the punishments would have been pretty severe because you have to like all go all the way back, you know.
Yep.
And so that's why these games feel so good to play. Is like the first time I beat that boss, and like the very first boss I beat, like the Beast Man. You know what I mean? That's in the
Yeah.
bottom of the first thing.
Hmm.
I was like thrilled. It was really really good, and it's really stereotypical to say, and like everyone who plays FromSoft games has the exact same story. But like you beat that first boss, and you're like, wow, I get it. Like that's really cool. I like that feeling, and like that's. I think they did a really good job with the earlier area, putting a whole bunch of tiny catacombs that you could feel really good about beating and kind of get that momentum going. Like I
Yeah.
think that's where the level design really shines.
I think that later on, there's fewer and fewer of those catacombs. And I
Yeah.
feel like they could have taken the time to have more little dungeons. I find that at the beginning, you have like catacombs and caves and like, it's the tombs where you find the ashes and you have all these different things everywhere. And then
Hmm.
later on, it's like you have like big castles and forts and stretches of land with a grace. And I feel like they could have
Yeah.
done something in between some of those things because I really like the cave structure. I actually really like I mean, I know I'm talking about copy and paste here, and all the caves look mostly the same. There's a couple differences, like this one has moss, and this one has poison, this one has rot,
Mhm.
but they're all like kind of the same. But I still enjoyed every single one. I never knew what the boss was going to be at the bottom before I actually got there, and I really, really
Four,
enjoyed the caves.
four or burial watchdogs. Four of them.
Or for burial watchdogs. I actually
Yeah, you
never
never
had trouble
know.
with the watchdogs. They were a very easy monster. I actually love getting summoned into those. Did you do multiplayer? We didn't talk about multiplayer. Did you
Oh no,
multiplayer?
I'm a big weenie.
So did you
And
turn off like everything or?
I simply launched the game in offline mode. I do not.
Oh, you went in offline mode?
Yeah, I don't want anyone else to see how bad I suck. Like,
Okay.
I honestly I find the messages cringy. I think is the technical term. I find their jokes played out and unfunny,
Okay.
and
So
unhelpful at best.
so they were unhelpful most of the time. There were a couple times where you'd find like a bunch of messages at a wall, and then you go to the wall and hit it, and it's a secret door, and you're like, awesome, thank you, team.
Yeah.
But also the number of times that people wrote either like two fingers or tri-finger butthole was very funny next to guys that are like slumped over like the corpses that are like on ledges and stuff.
Mhm.
That was also very funny. That never got old for me. But I loved helping players because you can put down your summon sign, then people can summon you to help them beat content and beat bosses and get through whole areas. And I personally loved doing that because you get to see like the triumph in people's faces where they've clearly been at this for hours and you join their game and you help them beat a boss and you watch them, they're like spamming all the emotes and they're jumping up and down. And I
Yeah.
loved it. I had a fantastic time with that.
Yeah, I think the what they're going for is has been called jolly cooperation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where you're putting players in distinctive situations where they are rewarded for behaving nicely. Like you only get the rune arc if you win.
Yep.
So why would you join someone to grief them? You don't get anything. And the fact like they give you in-game resources for doing this. So even if you're a horrible misanthrope and you hate people and you don't want anybody to succeed, you still probably want their money. And so like, you
Yeah.
do it. I think that works well. I just have a very low tolerance for like this is part of the reason I liked Elden Ring. I have a very, very low tolerance for um crude jokes. Like I don't find them funny or fun at all. It's not my kind of humor, and I just didn't want to deal with it.
Mm.
And also it's like my first Souls game, and I was like, I don't want a stranger to watch me donk it up. Like I'm just gonna mess everything up, and it's gonna be embarrassing. Like,
I don't know. I found it was good because a lot of times when you're running around and playing, just seeing the ghosts go somewhere, either seeing somebody walk through a wall and I'd be like, secret, or
mm,
it was just satisfying to when you get to a boss fight, you can see the little blood stains and you watch somebody roll around and die, or you don't know a boss is coming and then you see somebody roll around and die, and then you're like, can I cast my buff spell real quick? Like, this place seems silent. What's going to happen? And then one of those like the Erd tree roots pop out of the ground.
mm.
So
Yeah, I mean that's another reason why like so this game is insanely popular. Like it took like from looking at the stats, I think it took several years for Dark Souls 3 to sell a total of 10 million copies internationally.
yeah,
And they sold 12 million in the first week or so. That's outside of Japan.
yeah,
And like this game is objectively popular. It's objectively, I think, the most popular game they put together. Um, and I think part of the reason is that it is like I don't get too weird about it, but it is pretty. It's non-problematic. Like there's not bizarre like sex appeal. You know what I mean? Like it's not the kind of game you'd be embarrassed to play in front of your family.
yeah.
Like some
Yes, it
parts
is. They'll watch you die a million times. You're like, no, I'm actually really. I can beat this boss. I can beat this boss. Okay.
I know, but like it's not the kind of game where there's a lot to argue about because you feel like it represented some real world issue incorrectly. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
hard to get offended at this game. It's their own made up world and they made a sad story in it, and like they didn't like they didn't make an ill-intentioned, ill-informed stance on something you care deeply about, and now you've got to be put in an awkward position of choosing between art and artist. Like
Yeah.
it's okay to like this game because it's a good game and you had a fun time doing it. And like I think there are some people out there that um don't like it because I feel like they have a very poor view of the fan base, and I largely agree with that because I largely find the Souls fan base insufferable. But like it's easy to like this game. It's easy to have fun in it, even if you're not a Souls fan, because it's so different from the standard formula that you can find yourself enjoying the parts of it that are Souls like because it's so
Hmm.
different.
Well, so as somebody who's played a lot of these games and in the franchise, I feel like there definitely is a level of hard to appreciate set of fans. There's like the whole get good joke and all that stuff. I
Mm.
do agree that it is nice to be able to play a game that is basically not controversial because of the content that's in it, but controversial because people disagree about how easy or hard the game is for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's for me personally, I really appreciate that this is a game that is literally just its own intellectual property, it's its own video game thing, and it's clearly selling. People have a desire and an appetite to play good games.
Yeah, like it's non-predatory in its monetization. It's
Yeah, there's literally no
non-problematic.
microtransactions.
Yeah, it's not problematic in its associations. Like playing this game doesn't make me sad because it reminds me of real world issues that I'm playing a game to ignore. And there's a time and a place for art to, shine a light on these sorts of things. Like games about war often have very harsh parts to them where
Yeah.
they speak very plainly about like the horrors of these things. But like this is a game that has a very metaphysical story to tell, and it's not one that's kind of tied to any real world allegory. Like it's their own weird space world, where aliens are invading. Like there's not a lot here that I would say directly applies to the real world.
Yep.
Like is kind of bizarre. And I think it's fun. Like it's fun to be able to go into this place without expectations that you're going to have to do emotional labor to connect this with like things that are important in the real world. And like not saying that other types of games are bad. In fact, they can be insanely poignant and are really wonderful at like, exposing people to issues that they may not have thought about in ways that is hard to usually connect them with.
Yeah, because video
But
games
this
can
game
help you
is
explain
just,
something in a way you couldn't with another type of medium.
yeah, it's like games put you in someone else's shoes by definition. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're playing a character in a different world, and I think it's a really good way to explain things to people. And this game really wants to tell a bizarre story about how the time space aliens invaded, and that it's something the Elden Ring,
They're
and then
not
there's the
space
question
aliens.
marks.
It's the Elden Beast. It's completely
That's
different.
I'm sorry, it only came from outer space, but it's unrelated to the concept of space aliens. My mistake.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
a space alien. It's a space god. These are different things.
yes, completely. Um, yeah, I feel like that's part of the reason why it's so popular is like because it's unapologetically its own world. It doesn't feel like you're playing a slot machine. Like some games are just they're designed to take your money and like it feels gross.
Yep.
And this game isn't like that. And it's also just, I think it's just a really good job. Like it's fun recognizing competence to look at something that's good and be like, wow, that's a good game. And like it feels good to play it. And it's easy to like this game. Easy like I'm someone who doesn't like this genre and I found this easy to like. And I feel like that's a supreme accomplishment to broaden someone's horizons like that.
I agree.
Like,
I don't like open world games, and I really like Elden Ring. And I tell people, look, you might not like open world games, but Elden Ring is literally too good to pass up. It's just too good.
yeah, it's just fun. It's a fun game. I had a blast. I'm having a really good time in my second playthrough. I like how just strange it is, like that they're able to just put weird things in there and like build stuff that doesn't make any sense and like it's the kind of like unapologetic creativity where you have people that are very very confident that their creative vision is going to appeal. Like
Yeah.
not a lot of this seems filed down for the least common denominator. Like they're not censoring their creativity because they're worried it's going to not appeal to people who may not play these kinds of games.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah,
When I look at FromSoft, I think one of my favorite parts about just generally their design is also their art design and how like they don't shy away from to taking something that you could literally probably see in a dream and make it a reality. Like the way that all the castles are designed with these like weird labyrinthine halls, or like the entire concept behind like some aspects of I'm just thinking about Elden Ring in particular, like the whole area of the Lake of Rot and how it's designed, or like the Halig tree, where you're walking around the roots of the tree as it's bending and twisting around all the time, interspersed with this large castle built onto it. That it's like fantasy, but it's also like, as you
it's
said,
bizarre.
it's not toned
Like
down fantasy. It's somebody took the
yeah.
most fantastical approach and look at this piece of media or piece of art.
Yeah, and it's like it's the thing is like it's like making art for the most common consumer. Like this is I'm trying not to take it too off the rails here. There's a really really good quote by Roger Ebert on making of movies, and it's like if you try to make a movie for everybody, you're really actually making a movie for nobody
Yeah,
because like the average human being, like it's not like this is not really his exact quote, but it's what he was meaning by it. It's like the average person, the average movie watcher. That's not actually a real person. It's like a whole lot of people. You know what I
yeah, it's an
mean?
aggregate.
If you, yeah, but if you make a movie for someone, like specifically, you tell a specific story with a specific creative vision, then that movie everyone can love because the whole point of stuff like this is to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And like games are just like this. It's art, and you make something so specific and so out of there and you go, "Wow, like other people are going to love this." Because other people can't make something like this because they just have different ideas and they'll make something else that's different and cool.
Yeah.
And like I think that's part of what makes their games so distinct is like they've got their own ideas and they're making them, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they're just really big poison swamps that are brown and nobody likes, and like,
So
but
many
they could
poison
learn from their
swamps.
mistakes.
No, there's a
Sorry.
poison swamp in every game. Every single one
Well,
has
this
a poison
game,
swamp. This one at least gives
th-
you the horse, which lets you ride above the poison so you don't take damage. That took me a while to figure that one out. If you're on the horse, you don't take any poison in the swamps.
that game was that part was that's excellent. Like, and that's the thing is like I feel like that's a really great concise example of how they learned from what people liked and didn't like about the previous games. So they're like, poison swamps aren't fun. Everybody hates them. And they're like, well, it's important to have a poison swamp because we really want to make one. And that's fine. That's a fine reason to put something in your game because
Yeah.
you want to. You know what I mean? So then you say, it's okay if we have them because we're going to build in a way for people to not who don't want to deal with this. They just don't have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, except for
And
the Lake
then
of Rot, because
except for the
they
Lake of
they
Rot,
had
and
two
also
swamps. They were
also
like,
the
let's just have
Halleck
two,
tree. Oh my
and
god.
the Halleck tree. Yeah,
Going to the Lake of Rot, and I was like, oh, finally they got to a poison swamp where you can't ride your horse. Very clever, very very funny, very good. And then I got to the Halleck tree, and I was like, somehow it has gotten worse.
yeah.
Like it is even worse than it was before.
Well, something I have to appreciate about these style games, and this one in particular, is I really like that all the different mechanics also tell stories. Like in this one, they had holy damage, which they haven't had in previous games, but it makes sense.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this
Like,
is the first one because it used to be faith was all your lightning spells, and
mm,
magic or like sorceries or whatever was all your magic damage, and then fire was a separate thing, which is pyromancy in the other games. And
they just
then
put it in faith this time. Yeah.
yeah, and then they would have dark damage. This game doesn't have dark damage. This game has light damage instead, like holy, because of the contrast and where the power comes from. That like the two fingers are in fact a holy force or holy
Hmm.
entity. And so I personally really liked the narrative that just some of that stuff tells, and the way that rot tells a story. That it's not just like, oh, you get infected with the rot. It's really important to the world, and it has this actual real lasting consequence. Where in older
Yeah,
games they
like
would,
you can see it. Like it's not just like this is a poison swamp because it's an evil place underground and it's full of poison. And you're like, okay, they just built a town on top of poison. Sucks to be them. You know what
yeah,
I mean? But like Caelid is like this for a reason. Like it's a narrative they put together in the world.
yeah. And as much as I
And
don't like the what's his name, that old man in the swamp who's like, go get the needle. What's his name? Gowry.
Gowry,
As much
yeah.
as I don't like Gowry, he explains clearly why he approaches the rot of a new place, where he's like, the tree is stagnant and the rot is burning, destroying everything and bringing new life with it, which is horrible and
Mm.
twisted. But he's not wrong. And
I never
so,
realized you could kill those guys. Is that what's summoning the ghosts?
yeah, the ghosts are summoned by those guys in the chair. So if you kill them, they don't
Crazy.
summon anything. Or I learned if you just ignore them and run past, it's really easy.
Yeah. So there's a ghost I used for most of the early game, Banished Knight Oleg.
Oh yes, I
Um,
heard all about Oleg. Yep.
yeah. Oleg's really, really cool. It's funny because I actually have a coworker named Oleg, and he's the only other Oleg I've ever met. And then I was like, what are the odds I meet two Olegs in like, such a short period of time?
Well, I mean,
Um,
one's video game Oleg.
well, I think real Oleg probably can't sword fight as effectively, but I don't know for sure.
That's a good question. Yeah, you should check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only used the wolf pack, and
Wolf
because
Twist.
it was so good, it was like my pack. I just pull them out,
Yeah.
and then the mimic tier once I got it because it's the best thing in the entire game. It's so dumb.
Yeah, I think that no matter what they do to it statistically, the fact that it's a humanoid shape and attacks like it has your stuff means it's like opportunity cost, it's just strong.
And it
Like
costs
it's
your
just
health
going to be
instead of your
strong.
mana too to summon.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are definitely some other ones that are very, very good. Like I hear the Black Knife Tiche is really, really good.
Yep.
Um but like I just use the mimic tier because like I've got stuff in my weapon I want to happen. I feel like I'm reasonably stronger than most summons. So like why wouldn't I just want two of me? You know?
Yep. I agree. And so I used it all the time, especially because I was a faith build, so I had all the heals. So my mimic tier,
Hmm.
right before the end of the game, you get the Erd Tree heal, which heals me literally to full. And the mimic tier use it, and it goes up like 4,000 health whenever it presses the button. I was like, yeah, mimic tier.
Yeah. There's some really like I think that's an area in which this game can really do a better job in the future and whatever next iteration this game takes like a sequel or DLC is that there's no real incentive to experiment with ashes that you just earned.
And that is a problem that all of the Souls franchise have. So I don't know if they're
Hmm.
gonna fix it because they put stat requirements on it and they have pluses on everything because you have to
Yeah.
upgrade things. I don't mind the upgrading nature; it's just an RPG thing.
Mhm.
But it is for me personally. I find it disincentivized me from ever wanting to actually try to upgrade anything.
Yeah, I was thinking this through like the most of the game because what ended up happening was I was talking about this earlier. Like I had this straight sword that I got from practically the tutorial, and I kept finding more weapons that even when fully upgraded were just worse than what I was getting. And I think I'm thinking to myself, if I were in creative control of this game,
Mm.
I would make it so that, like, you know how some armor and stuff is just straight up better than other armor?
Yeah.
They try to not do this with weapons because they kind of want each individual weapon to be different but not better, so that like there's 1,000 different ways to play the game, all at kind of the same like effectiveness at the end. And I feel like the problem with that is that for someone like me who is very new to this, and I was really scared of branching out because I knew the move set of this weapon. Like
Yep.
I didn't want to experiment because I was like, not only am I stepping down in stats, like it might be better, I don't know. Usually it's worse, but I'd also have to learn like a whole new move set, and there's no guarantee that after I put in that work, it's actually going to be like more workable.
Yeah.
Is that if they had built in more obvious upgrades across different weapon types, so that like I'm playing a faith build and they made it so that like you start with a straight sword and then they give you a really good like I don't know like a spear or something. I would be forced because the stats are better to learn spear, and maybe I like spear better, you know? And that way I would have like an incentive to learn more. And this is exactly what DDO does with past lives. Like it gives you some sort of material benefit to branch out and learn something new, something that you can't just play the same build over and over again. You have to change. And
What's
that helps because DDO players, they go like for me when I first started playing as a player, I was like, I don't want to play a spellcaster, that sounds dumb. And then like Life 8, I tried a sorcerer and I was like, whoa, I'm a big moron. This is awesome. And I would never have done that if I hadn't been forced to diversify. And that's what I really want Elden Ring to do.
For sure.
Like,
I think the problem is that DDO and Elden Ring also carry two of the same problems, which in terms of like item diversity and usage is investment, where you invest a lot into a weapon
mhm,
and so you don't want to change your weapon. And the same thing happens in both in DDO and Elden Ring, where in Elden Ring you invest both the stats, you need strength and dex to use whatever your weapon you're using, and so you have to try it out. And same thing in DDO, you have to spend feats on your combat styles. So if I'm using, I'm not going to, if no matter what two-handed sword I'm getting, if I'm a two-weapon fighting guy, I will never equip that two-handed sword, ever.
yeah.
So you always have to invest. And not only that is it the feats, but also the stat requirements as well. Even if imagine you wanted to take both feats or go into both, the strength and dex requirements on the feats mean because your base stats they're harder to upgrade than they are in Elden Ring. It doesn't take like your equipment to factor that stuff in, so it makes it
Mhm,
a little bit more challenging. But then the step on top of that is that DD also has the same type of cyclical problem where it's like the cost investment as you get further into the game comes into your filigrees. If I'm playing as a character and I get a new weapon, let's say a new quest comes out and it drops a new weapon and it fits perfectly with my build, but I already have 9 filigrees of my weapon. So now I got to
yeah.
go to the DDO store and I got to spend like 300
No,
points to buy a new
it's a real
thing to slot
problem.
out my weapon, and then I got to do this. And
I completely agree. Like I feel like that's an area where we as designers could absolutely improve. And like that sort of problem is common amongst games, but the good part about common problem is that that means that there are equally common solutions. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like someone's got to have puzzled this out. On DDO, I feel like what we could do in the future is perhaps abstract out the sentient jewel from being something in your item to being something on you. So there's like a sentient jewel slot. You put that in there, and you put the filigree in there, and then you can swap your weapon out no problem. Um, like that would help alleviate that concern,
yep,
making things easier to swap in general. Like it's there's a lot of different ways to slice this.
yeah.
Um, I think that one of the things the DDO can definitely learn from Elden Ring is like I think it really all just comes down to the time you spend in menus. Like I feel like Elden Ring just has really good inventory systems.
Yeah, and
And like I know I've said this like 4 times, but like that really impressed me. Like I think it was just they did a seamless job.
well, it's not only that. They also, if they want you to go into the menu, then don't waste your time. Why am I going to the menu? To look at the cool new item that I got. I picked
Yeah.
up a cool sword, and then every sword has like a really cool bit of like, I don't know if you how much of the flavor text you read on everything, but every sword, every armor,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
note, I read all the text on it because it starts to put the pieces of the puzzle together about the different characters and what their motivations are and where they came from and little tiny details. And
Yeah. I think
I
that's
love that.
that's really good. I feel like that's really good. And now like part of the reason Elden Ring is so different is like if you think about it, Elden Ring only actually has like 4 menus and DDO has like 15.
Oh, absolutely. And the DDO
Like
has
there's just
menus in the menus where like you
yeah,
mouse over
like there's a
stuff and it
lot
gives you
going
more
on.
detail.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the difference between the two games, obviously, they play so differently that it's hard to make fair
Yeah,
comparisons about how that happens.
but
But
at the same time, though, like DDO is more similar to this game than it is to like World of Warcraft.
100%.
Like DDO, the concept of movement being decoupled from the concept of attacking is actually different than here, in which movement and attacking are both deliberate choices. Like, when you attack, you can't move, and vice versa. I mean, like there are some exceptions like daggers and stuff, but like like but it's more of like a combat focused thing. Like you feel
Yeah.
more deliberately in the action seat. While
Yeah.
you're playing.
Well, DDO is more of an action game. I've always like thought that Dungeons and Dragons Online is more closely related to like God of War than it is like World
Hmm.
of Warcraft, because there are stats and there are numbers and all that stuff behind the hood, but there's so much of the game that's in directly your control. When you move around, you're doing a thing. When you're attacking the monsters, you're directing how everything is happening. And if there were just fewer buttons, DDO would feel like a lot smoother on a controller, if that makes sense. If the game got like 5e-ified, and so that every class is just like a
Yeah.
certain number of buttons.
Well,
Um,
that's something we've been doing. Like if you notice our new Epic Destinies, so many of those things that were actives are now passives, and like rather than having multiple buttons, we have
yeah,
one button that upgrades in a significant way. And
yeah,
like if we were to expand that design philosophy out of the game, like I've always felt that DDO has like it's not that DDO has too many actives, it's that DDO has too many actives that don't feel impactful.
yeah. A
Like
lot of
a
like tiny
button.
little buttons that you press that adds
Yeah.
like a tiny stat for a moment, or like just
Yeah,
in
or an
general.
attack that just does more numbers and doesn't change how you play. And like if we could get beyond that and say that so every single button you press does something that's important, that's impactful, that's action based, that makes you want to pay attention and care, then we could free up a lot of space, and then every button you press means something, and then we get the number of buttons down, and then we're able to play it on like a controller better. We have some native controller support, but like there's a lot of buttons in our game,
Yeah,
like.
I run into the problem where whenever I think about stuff like that, I go, man. But then you make a game that's very different than Dungeons and Dragons Online. Like
Mhm.
the comparisons, the fact that Dungeons and Dragons Online is like a 3.5 style game means it does have limitations on how far you want to go from that before it's more like a video game with the Dungeons and Dragons coat of paint on it, like Neverwinter, versus
Mhm.
like being the actual rule system. Like I've talked about this 100 times where I think that the whole hitting thing where like you hit a monster, but you don't hit it. You have to roll to hit it. Like my
The
sword
Morrowind
connects.
approach. The
Yeah,
Morrowind
exactly.
approach, yeah.
So I have to beat their armor class to be able to do damage to them. And so which doesn't make a whole lot of sense in like modern games. Like in Elden Ring, no matter how much damage you do, like if your damage sucks, you just do less damage to the monster, but you always hit it because that's how video game works. And if you take
Yeah.
that out of DDO, I think the game might become better in some respects, but now you have a different video game.
Yeah, like there are definitely some parts of 3.5 where it would feel inauthentic to remove. Like I don't see a world where we remove two hit from the game.
Yeah.
It's just kind of part of it. And like for better or for worse, authenticity is important in that respect. But on the other hand, some parts of 3.5 are rules for a game where you sit on a chair and you play with your friends in real life. And so removing those rules were only there for like the social contract or for limiting play sessions so that you can go get lunch before your mom yells at you. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, considering the context behind those rules, you can kind of decipher which ones are okay to bend and which ones are okay to break.
Yep.
And like, yeah, I don't know. Like I know for a fact that DDO runs on a Steam Deck, which is awesome.
Yep. It does.
Um, I think that's just super super cool, and I want to be able to like that's the thing is like it's kind of like a razor's edge. Like, obviously we don't want to take away all of the active button pressy part of the game because it is an MMO and people do enjoy that.
Yep.
But
I do.
like you know what I mean? Like we have to do a really good job about making sure that like, actives are impactful and necessary and stuff like that. And we're not just removing complexity for the sake of removing complexity, because some complexity is good. Like, that's
Yeah.
part of what makes DDO good, is that it's complex.
Actually, I'll say something that I really like about DDO that makes it very different. And just from watching my shitty Elden Ring gameplay right now, is
You're doing great.
I'm watching myself like do things where I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I make that decision? And something that I appreciate about it is that the Elden Ring is putting you in situations where you're always doing the same thing a different way. Where like, oh, I'm fighting this land octopus on a staircase in a cavern with these little guys attacking me. Have I done that before? No. So I have to think about how I want to plan the problem. It's not just about like, how do I get the most numbers out? It's solving a problem through physical combat and physical locations. And Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
Online is one of the games that, like I play a lot of MMOs, and the standard MMO thing is if you're playing a damage character or whatever, you have your rotation of spells. You do 1 and then 2 and
Yeah.
then 3 and then 4, your stat priority of your whatever. And Dungeons and Dragons Online does, on some level, at the uppest, mostest, tierest echelon, has something like that. But in a lot of times, and most of the time when you're just playing, you're running around, you're fighting the monsters. Oh, there's a big ogre. Now I'm going to hit the trip button because this is what I want to do. I want to do this thing.
Yeah.
It's more of an action-oriented thing, and I really appreciate that about that game. And also in similar vein with Elden Ring, where you're always like, the nature of it, almost everything being improvisational, is really great. And I like the fact that we have different tools for different situations and kits.
Yeah. Well, it's fun because it's like, in Elden Ring, you think about it, how many different ways do you have to interact with the world? You can hit monster, you can pull lever, you can stand on button,
Mhm.
and you can talk to NPC
Yeah.
and say yes or no. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a lot of different ways for the game to put something new together. You know what I mean? Like, that's when you think I'm down to it. Like, you're not out there with like, like a hacking mini game, like kind of a deal. There's only so many different ways for your character to solve problems, and the
Yeah.
majority of the ways you solve problems are with hit monster. Like, hit monster is 99% of the game,
Yep.
but it keeps it feeling fresh. You know what I mean? It puts you in new places and it gives you new challenges. And sometimes it's as simple as like, you fought monster before, and you're like, yeah, I fought monster, and like, yeah, two monster. And you're like, oh geez, I've never fought two monster of the same. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's more than I expected. And like, in the same way, DDO has a few more different ways you can interact with stuff. Like, we have more distinctive puzzles and stuff like that. But most of it's hit monster, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
And like, I think we can learn from Elden Ring about like, if you want to make a game that's about hit monster, which is totally fine. It's like all video games. Like, what else can we do to make it so that that continues to stay exciting? You
Yep.
know, I feel like monster behaviors and stuff is a really easy way to do. Did you ever actually finish this catacomb, by the way?
So
The
I'm being
invisible
told,
bridge?
no, I'm being told there's an invisible bridge. I did not do an invisible bridge in here. So no, I did not do that. I left immediately after following this. I see all
Yeah,
the notes that are telling me to jump down that thing, and I did not jump down there. I just walked away.
oh my god. This is the thing is like, that's another part is FromSoft's reputation gets away from it
Yep.
sometimes. So in the very beginning of the game, it's like, "Hey, jump down this big pit." And I was like, "No. No. Like, I'm not going to do that." I've seen people play Dark Souls. I know for a fact that making people jump down a pit and secretly it kills them, that's really funny to you people. So I'm
Yep.
not going to do it. Turns out that was the tutorial of the game. So like, I just didn't do it.
Yep.
Like, I just didn't do the tutorial because I was like, "Nah, I'm too smart for you." And turns out the game was not trying to fool me.
Yep.
I don't know. Oh my
No,
gosh, it's so late. We've been talking for 3 hours.
I know. It's because this game is really good. Like,
it's just so good. There's so much to talk about. Like,
Elden Ring is really good. Okay, so if you've learned anything, I just want to, if we're gonna wrap this up, a big thing I want you guys to remember is that Isle of Dread is coming out later this year. Okay, so it's going to be coming out at some point, late spring, early summer is the last time we heard, which could be 1, 2, 3 months from now. I don't know. What I do know is since it hasn't come out yet, go spend $100 or whatever this game costs, buy your Elden Ring, or borrow the copy from a friend who already finished it, and go play this goddamn video game. Okay, it's so good. It's so good. I can't even, like, if you're worried about it being too hard, just important note, there are a ton of these elements which you'll run into and you'll be like, oh man, I can't beat this, I can't do this thing. So you just go somewhere else and you fight a bunch of other monsters, and you beat those monsters, and then you get cool new items or powers or level up, and then you come back and you're like, "Ha, these guys are actually easy, and I can beat them now," and it's good. I will
Yeah,
say,
like
yeah, go ahead.
no, it's important. Even if you like, even if you're playing like a one game a whole bunch, playing other games is fun and important sometimes because it gives you perspective on what you actually really liked about DDO.
Yeah,
Like it's important. Like like you gotta I'm not saying like you gotta broaden your horizons, but like this game, I love it, and I'm really happy I played it, and I'm happy that I got to experience this thing, and then we could take these lessons learned and we can make DDO better, and that's like it's a fun, it's nice, it's fun.
yeah.
It's
Uh,
gonna be tough doing Isle of Dread when I have to work on a video game rather than play one, but like.
I right. I was gonna say, how did you feel about the final boss?
I thought it was very Kingdom Heartsy, like in music and actions wise. Um, that's not a compliment, by the way. I don't like Kingdom Hearts.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
have no idea.
that was an insult. I'm kidding. So this game, which is ironic for a game whose lead designer's name is Miyazaki, it has a lot of notes of Miyazaki movies. And obviously, Hayao Miyazaki and Hidetaka Miyazaki are two different people. Like they probably don't know each other. But
No.
like the final boss is very reminiscent of the forest spirit from the end of Mononoke Hime or Princess Mononoke. And like the winding stairways, the wooden stairways around Godric's castle is reminiscent of Spirited Away and like that one iconic staircase,
Hmm.
and like there's just a lot of individual characters and motifs and stuff that is very Spirited Away-ish, which I found very interesting, because this game's narrative has like nothing to do with any of the narratives of any of those movies. Like, it's unrelated. So they just took all the cool visuals.
I mean, isn't that how you're supposed to do it? You don't have to copy the whole movie. You just take some of the ideas. You take a
Yeah,
little bit. You just take a little bit.
yeah. I thought the final boss was really cool. I had the intended cinematic experience of fighting this guy, this big thingy-majig one-on-one, and then running up towards that final hit where I had to like dodge the horizontal sword swipes. Very Sekiro.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen their final boss.
I have not. I
Um,
have to play
Not final
Sekiro.
boss.
It's on the list.
It's not a final boss. I'm sorry. There's a big dragon that's very similar, but
Yeah.
basically a very cinematic moment where I was like, did the dodge, did the dodge, did the dodge, and then one last stab, kind of a deal.
Hmm.
Um, and so I feel like I feel like I got the intended stuff out of it. Like I can stop playing now and be really happy, but I don't want to stop because I had a great time. So
Yeah. For me, Radigan was awesome. I loved
mhm.
the element and how they introduced him to the fight and the storyline with him and Marika and all the interactions with these two characters. I thought that was great, and I really loved that fight. And Elden
Mhm.
Beast, I liked the fight. I just kind of wish there was a cool or more, not noteworthy is the wrong word, maybe a more hinted boss or something. Like I was like, boom, Elden Beast, and I was like, that's kind of cool. It doesn't even have a name.
Yeah,
It's just like big boss, and I was like, hmm.
I don't think that was their high point. I
Yeah,
feel like it was certainly cinematic, but like if like the crumbling lord someone's talking about this, and like there's the lich dragon or something, not lich dragon. There's a dragon with missing its heads. At
yeah,
the
the
bottom of
dragon.
Terra
That's
Missoula.
yeah. That was a great fight. I loved that fight.
Yeah, and like that felt more final bossy to me.
Yeah. Well, it had like
Um,
a build up and the story with Farah Missoula, and it brought you through time. So it was like this big, like build up to what things were like before, and you could see the whole city fully constructed, and
mhm.
it was cool. I don't know. It's just in the other games you had like, Demon Souls brought back like the main antagonist. It was like really obvious and was impactful the whole time. And
Yeah, like
Demon
this
Souls
goes
2
back to
was same thing, and
the
Demon Souls 3 was like really cool cinematic boss fight with all this thing going on. And this one, again, it wasn't that it wasn't cinematic or cool. I liked the boss and the fight. I just wish my boss had a name,
yeah, it
and I
doesn't.
knew it before I went in.
There's a lot of questions that remain unanswered. Mostly it's because I believe I chose an ending that doesn't give you anything.
Well, yeah, you killed everyone. You burnt
Yeah,
the
I killed
city down.
everybody, so I don't get the plot. I've lost my rights to know how the story ended. Um, but like the implication slash revelation that Marika and Radagon are the same person. I
Correct.
found that confusing. Um,
The game tells you that
and
before that point. There's like items
it,
you can find that give you that information.
I still don't understand why it was like necessary. Like it doesn't. It just doesn't seem. I don't know. It just seemed like okay. Like I don't know. Um, like I guess if I had interacted with Radagon or America before then, and then the revelation they were the same person, because like 20 minutes earlier, I was like, "Whoa, Beast Guy is actually the Lord of Death! Whoa, that's crazy! What are the odds of the same person?" And then they use the same twist again, except I'd never met either of those characters. So how was I supposed to know they were not the same person?
Yeah. And as I mentioned this before, I think that the FromSoft environmental storytelling is really good. And I think that the itemized the way that they tell things through like smaller descriptions and pitter patter of this character says this and this character says that, I think it's usually
Mhm.
done really well. But when I go like, when a character says a thing or read an item description, and then you go 7 to 10 hours before hearing anything else about that character because the world is too big, like I've already forgot. I don't remember anymore. And there's nothing I can do about that. That's just the design of the game and the open world nature of it.
Yeah, and it's like when you've got an open world, you don't have a way of enforcing an order in which the player learns information.
Yeah, you might get one piece before another piece. And so,
Yeah, and you also don't have a way to ensure that they actually get it because, like, with required bosses, you get items because they're required, so everyone by definition must have those items.
yep.
But you're playing an open world game. What if you straight up like didn't kill Godric? He's not required. You know what I mean? Or God, whatever the God, yeah, Godric, the crafted.
Or Godefroy.
That one was egregious.
I loved Godefroy. You didn't like
I
Godefroy?
That one was egregious, is what that was. Um, but
Good old Godefroy.
I don't know. I think that I loved this game, and I imagine that basically every video game coming out in the next 5 or 6 years, in the same way that we got like 80 Breath of the Wilds, we're gonna get like 80 Elden Rings. So oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's so late. I have to go to bed.
All right. Thank you for coming on and talking about Elden Ring. Next time we do developer insights, we're gonna talk about the game Dungeons and Dragons Online. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about this game because we both sunk so much time into it, and also as you're somebody who's a game designer, it was fun to like kind of rap about this thing. Um,
Yeah,
so I still want to do that item design contest, and we're gonna
yeah,
do
that'd
it.
be great.
I will at some point sit down and actually write the rules, and then I'm going to pass them by you, and then I'm going to pass them by Jerry, and then I'll post them so you guys can see them. I really want to do that, but it involves some quantity of work, and I hate when things involve some quantity of work. That's just
I
it's the
know it's
worst.
terrible.
It's literally terrible.
Yeah, well, hopefully next time I'll be working on something at DDO that is less because the stuff I'm working on right now, something that doesn't come out for like 8 months and I can't talk about it. So like
oh, but you
I got
just said it
other
comes out in 8 months. Oh, there you go. Boom, gotcha.
yeah, watch out for that.
Guys, a game that's being continuously developed is going to have content coming out later this year or even into next year. Whoa.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited for Isle of Dread.
Me too.
I think it's gonna be great. I just I don't know. I'm really happy with the state of the game DDO was. Like it's cool. It's cool to play other games and compare them. Because it's like I feel like some parts are just they kind of are universally fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I have.
Oh,
Thanks for having me
I
on.
was going to say the last question I actually do have for you because this is the best question ever. If you had to
Yeah.
give Elden Ring out of 10, what would you do?
Ooh, probably a 9 out of 10.
A 9 out of 10? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd say a 9 out of 10.
I would probably also go at maybe a 9 out of 10, maybe like 8.7. It's like
Mhm.
really good, but it's not a perfect game to me. No, it has things
Yeah,
it can fix.
it's not perfect to me because that's really funny. I like that you fell off there, but
Thank you.
uh, it's not perfect to me because I had almost no control over how my character looked.
Yeah.
If I had some ability to wear items cosmetically,
Hmm.
then it would be a perfect 10 for me. Um,
But you can make your face so good. I love Vigo Pigeon's face is perfect.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, like, I just think it's like good
gotta
on
send you a
them.
picture of my new face, of the new character I just made.
Honestly, good on them for having like they had a very robust character creator, and allowing players to change their appearance, and even their body type after they make their game.
Yeah, with the
I think
mirror,
that's
that's just a good. Every game should do that. Every
yeah,
game should just
like
let you do that.
yeah, I think that's just it's another great example of very modern sensibilities, which is just great. Like I
Yeah,
like that they had like non-gendered body types, like
yeah.
they're
They just
aesthetically
had Type
gendered,
A and
but
Type B.
yeah, and like because like sometimes you gotta do whatever, and like I think that they just did a really good job building a cool world that feels good to like. It feels good to like this game. I think that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm
Except
not
for the
gonna keep
big
you any longer.
slugs.
You don't
Except
like
for
the
the
big
big.
slugs?
No, I hate the slugs. I hate the dogs and the rats.
Oh yeah, the
Oh my
invisible
god,
slugs that summon guys. You like those ones? Or the invisible ones that
snails,
summon
the
the
snakes,
snails?
the snake snails.
The snake snails. Because I kept telling people, I'm like, yo, these snails are snakes. They have scales, they have fangs, they're snakes. And everyone's like, no, dude, they're just snails. They're not. They're snake snails. They're
They are snake snails.
snakes.
They are. That Magmorm you're fighting, by the way, literally one shot me. I was like a level 150. I roll up on this guy. He hit me one time and I died.
Oh, I pulled this around to everything in here. I had him just literally kill all the monsters in the local area. He killed all the crabs and everything. I got all the souls, and then I took him out. And mostly
That's
Rot
great.
Breath. I will say Rot Breath carried me through most of the game.
Yeah. I forgot to gripe about one thing. You
Yeah.
know those enemies that are like a big long centipede made out of arms?
Yeah.
Hate those guys.
Big long set. Oh, the ones that are like cloaked and they scream a lot and they run at you
Yes.
and they teleport around.
Yes.
So did you know? I learned this recently because I've been watching YouTube videos about
I do
Elden
know. I
Ring.
do know. I know what you're gonna say, and I do know.
Oh, that you can heal them to damage them.
Yes.
I didn't know this, and I use so much healing, and so with the fact that like I had no idea that you just heal them and they explode is so cool.
Yeah.
And I never figured that out. Damn it, Miyazaki, you got me again.
Yeah. I think it's a that's kind of the fun of it though. Is that like the game just gives you a whole bunch of nonsense and goes figure it out, and then you gotta figure it out. It's fun. It's a fun time.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna take off. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this was great.
Sorry to give you 3.5 hours of stuff to edit.
That's okay. I'm gonna do a very bad job.